Chapter 431. Sir. Do you think that youth was sent down by one of the aristocratic families from the 6 prefectures to gain experience? Chiao-san still didn't believe that someone could comprehend the fire spirit's origin at such a young age in this insignificant Seikong planet in the lower star domain. If that was true, then what kind of frightening talent was that? Luigi didn't say anything else and silently stared at the stage for a while before turning around and quietly leaving with his attendant Chiao-san. He could only rejoice that he had only given a demonic body pill and not a level 12 mystic breakthrough pill. Otherwise, his losses would have been even greater. Hui En wasn't of great use. At this time, Hui En's eyes were filled with fear, bewilderment, bitter tears, vexation, struggle, and disappointment. However, none of these emotions entered the Crown Prince's eyes. His gaze didn't even linger on her for half a second. Hui En, whose face was contorted from the pain of being burned by the purple flames, wailed miserably. No! He didn't even look at her. He didn't even shift his gaze. Ah! Father, Hui En is in so much pain. So much pain. Only then did she remember the warning her father gave her before he sent her to the gates of hell: don't provoke that person in Shijio City again, or else even father won't be able to save you. Mo Lien didn't care about how bitter and regretful Commandery Princess Hui En was. Even now, his heart was still thumping madly. When he saw that sword heading straight for the little fellow's back, Mo Lien felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. This Hui En simply deserved to die a million times. He even had the urge to skin her alive. Reaching out to hold the little fellow's small hand, Mo Lien lowered his head to examine her from head to toe. Seeing that she was unscathed, he sighed in relief. Thank goodness you're all right. Arbor looked up at him and suddenly patted his chest lightly. Her dark eyes clearly said, don't be afraid, what could happen to this darling? Mo Lien suddenly hugged her tightly, chuckling softly as he hugged her. His darling was so funny. Xiao Mu tried her best to raise her head in his arms and stretch out her small paws to push him away. However, for some reason, his aggrieved voice from back then kept echoing in her mind, don't push me away, don't push me away. Arbor withdrew his claws somewhat sullenly, thinking to himself, maybe what happened just now really scared him a little. Men are really too easily frightened. Arbor lifted his chin helplessly, put his little hand behind his back, and patted him gently. Morong Sun immediately jumped up, but before she could angrily yell, damn punk, let go of my disciple, Shixia Valley's Valley Master, this good-natured person, jumped out first and shouted, next match. Holy Water Sect disciple Su Shanshan accepts the challenge of Daybreak Sect disciple Liang Qingqing. The crowd's gazes that were on Mo Lien and Yi Zichen immediately shifted back to the arena. However, the shock in his heart towards the youth could not be calmed down for a long time. Only a small cluster of purple flames was left. It fell to the ground and slowly burned. As for Hui En, she had already been burned to ashes at some point in time. Far away in Guanlon City, the old prince of the vassal king of an Anan's estate suddenly received a report from the people guarding the ancestral hall. He hastily rushed to the ancestral hall and collapsed on the ground when he saw his daughter's eternal life lamp extinguished. Hui En, she died. She didn't even leave behind a word before she died. Oh, his daughter. The old prince was overcome with grief. Princess Anam rushed over and burst into tears the moment she entered the room. Chapter 432. Your Highness, what exactly is going on? Tell me what happened, tell me. Princess Anam felt like her heart was about to shatter. She only had a son and a daughter. Her eldest son was away most of the time, while her daughter was a caretaker. Several years ago, an inexplicable self-explosion destroyed her daughter. She had asked her husband countless times what happened, but he refused to tell her. After that, her daughter was sent to the ghost sect for treatment. She originally thought that her daughter would come back this year no matter what. Who would have expected that after waiting for so long, she would end up seeing her daughter die before her own? Princess Anam was infuriated, and she pulled the old prince to continuously interrogate him about the matter. The old prince remained silent from beginning to end, causing Princess Anam to be so anxious that she paced around him in circles. "Say something. My daughter died tragically, but as her mother, I don't even have the right to know." The vassal king of Nan looked at the princess consort and sighed deeply. "I will send people to investigate this matter." "Is it related to that self-explosion several years ago?" The princess consort was unable to restrain her anger. "You still won't tell me why that person self-exploded. Tell me, did someone deliberately frame my Huihen?" "Princess consort, it's not that I don't want to tell you. You won't benefit from knowing this matter." The vassal king of Nan understood his princess consort too well. She was used to making her own decisions and couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in her eyes. She was already so strict with those concubines and concubines' daughters who didn't pose any threat in the inner court, let alone if she knew that the self-explosion back then was entirely due to someone else's revenge after Huihen's willful and reckless behavior. She had doted on Huihen since she was young, so she wouldn't find fault with herself when something happened and would definitely blame it all on the other party. If she knew that the crown prince also had a hand in the back, with the princess consort's personality, she definitely wouldn't take things lying down. He understood His Highness too well. He usually looked gentle and cheerful and didn't seem to get angry, but once he wanted to deal with you, it definitely wouldn't be as simple as killing you. He would definitely dig deeper and uproot you. Several years ago, it was he who made a prompt decision to withdraw quickly and immediately send Huihen out of the capital. Otherwise, Huihen would probably have died back then. My Wu family is not to be trifled with in Guanlan City. What are you worried about, Your Highness? Tell me. The princess consort questioned angrily. Recently, the Duan family has been choosing noble ladies for the second son of the third branch. If you have time, bring a few more maidservants to visit the Duan family. The old prince straightened out his mood, stood up, and left after saying this. King consort Wu Hongma coldly watched as the vassal king of Nan walked out. She gnashed her teeth and said, "Do you think I won't be able to find anything if you don't say anything? Huihen, don't worry. Mother will definitely avenge you. Whoever dares to touch you, Mother will turn their entire family into ashes." Eternally lost, my Joe's section break. After 1.5 days of competition, the top 20 were decided. Disciples from the 3 sects and 5 groups were selected. However, among them, the Ghost sect suffered the most. Among the 3 sects, the Holy Waters sect and the Heavenly Tao sect had 4 disciples each. The Daybreak sect had 3, the Purple Firmament faction had 4, and the Omni faction and Myriad faction had 2 each. Only the Ghost sect was the most pitiful, with only Peng Zhang being selected. Moreover, during the competition, Peng Zhang's level 10 Mystic Beast, the thousand-faced venomous spider, had bitten many people from the other sects, causing Arbor to be very busy with detoxification. How infuriating! It caused her to have to save people while watching the competition. Peng Zhang had made countless enemies now, and even the other members of the 5 groups hated him to the core. Chapter 433. The first match of the top 20 was between Daybreak sect's Duan Yu and Ghost faction's Peng Zhang. Elder Ghost was a bit nervous. Their sect only had one person who entered the top 20. If they were eliminated this time, then they really would have no face left. If they couldn't even enter the top 10, how could they face the sect master when they returned? They would most likely be hacked to death by the sect master. Peng Zhang, you have to do well. Elder Ghost silently cheered for Peng Zhang in his mind. Peng Zhang coldly looked at the youth who was slowly walking up the stage with his arms folded. The youth was wearing a brocade robe and long shoes. He held a raven bone fan in his hand, and his face was as handsome as jade. Duan Yu was wielding a weapon. This was her first time seeing a youth wielding a weapon. Arbor's eyes brightened slightly. This was definitely the rhythm of beating Peng Zhang to death. Not bad, darling Qiao liked it. This Peng Zhang should have died long ago. He bounced around endlessly and made her so busy. Peng Zhang released the thousand-faced venomous spider. As soon as it was released, the thousand-faced venomous spider excitedly crawled around his feet, hissing as it brewed its venom. "Summon your mystic beast," Peng Zhang said haughtily. Duan Yu sneered, "Do I need to summon my mystic beast to deal with you guys? Don't joke around." He didn't say anything else and flung the raven bone fan out. The raven bone fan abruptly flew in front of Peng Zhang, but it was blocked by the mystic energy Peng Zhang channeled, unable to advance even half an inch. Peng Zhang sneered and was about to mock when his pupils abruptly contracted. Countless specks of cold light flew out from the raven bone fan and whizzed towards Peng Zhang's surroundings before exploding in succession. Peng Zhang's expression abruptly changed. He mustered all the mystic energy in his body to launch a full-scale defense, but how could he make it in time? How could he have known that this punk would use a killing move as soon as he started? He didn't give the other party any time to prepare. This was not an ordinary concealed weapon. When the cold light exploded on his body, he could clearly feel that every bit of the cold light that flew out from the black bone fan contained a strong profound energy. The mystic energy he used to defend himself was completely unable to block the specks of cold light flying out of the raven bone fan. Peng Zhang could feel that the defensive power around his body was weakening, and he could only activate his profound energy in a fluster to protect his body. He even shouted angrily, "Thousand-faced venomous spider!" Hiss! The thousand-faced venomous spider swiftly crawled towards Duan Yu's leg. In the blink of an eye, the raven bone fan flew back into Duan Yu's hand. Duan Yu leaped, and his slender figure streaked across the air like a shadow. His long, loose hair suddenly swayed slightly. Hundreds of cold lights suddenly shot out from his hair and pounced on the thousand-faced venomous spider on the ground. Hua! Everyone watched nervously, and many people couldn't help but stand up. Elder Ghost's face was even more ashen. His fingers that were pinching the armrest had already turned slightly purple. "You've done well, Peng Zhang. You're the only one left in the sect." After Duan Yu closed the raven bone fan in his hand, he flicked it slightly with his raised wrist. The black bone fan abruptly transformed into a long sword. Following the youth's figure, it was suddenly delivered to Peng Zhang's throat. The blazing sun was like fire, the sunlight shining down. At that moment, everyone felt as if the youth's figure that was suspended in midair had become transparent. The long sword slashed open Peng Zhang's neck. Peng Zhang turned pale with fright as his eyes bulged. He only heard cracking sounds coming from his throat, as if something warm was slowly flowing out. Bam! Peng Zhang powerlessly crashed to the ground. Dejected, Elder Ghost drooped his head down, laying down on the stool in defeat. Chapter 434. The youth gracefully landed on the ground and withdrew his long sword, turning it into a fan again as he gently waved it. Needless to say, this handsomeness not only made the Coitus sect's love-struck infatuated, but even their own Daybreak sect's female disciples clasped their faces and called him senior martial brother. When Xixia Valley's Valley Master rushed up, Peng Zhang had already breathed his last. His venomous spider was still hanging on by a thread after being attacked by 100 cold glints, but it immediately died the moment its master died. With one man and one beast's corpses strewn across the stage, the Valley Master didn't know what to say anymore. Say that the youth was too ruthless and killed his opponent in a few moves? But he didn't even summon out his mystic beast. He clearly went easy on him. In the end, it was still because Peng Zhang was too weak. Duan Yu was careless and killed him. In a moment of carelessness. Xixia Valley's Valley Master comforted himself like this, but even he couldn't continue making up this lie. After Xixia Valley's Valley Master announced the results of the match, Duan Yu jumped down from the stage and excitedly ran toward Arbor. "Jojo, I killed that bad guy. Are you happy?" Duan Yu's question caused the Ghost faction disciples' faces to darken. "Happy," Arbor replied bluntly. "Humph." Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him. "I'll do it in one move." Bah! Duan Yu simply moved a small square stool and squeezed himself next to Arbor. "Jojo, what grudge do you have with Mu Liangda? Tell me about it." Everyone pricked up their ears. After 2 more matches, it would be Arbor's match against Muliangda. Everyone felt that it would definitely be worth watching. Of course, they were also very curious as to why this little junior sister of the Holy Water sect kept wanting to challenge Muliangda one-on-one. Arbor tilted his head and pondered. Enemy. The little fellow suddenly thought of something and left her seat to run to Daybreak Sect's Sect Master Liang Wanshan. She cupped her hands respectfully. Sect Master, I'm going to kill your sect's disciple, Muliangda, in a moment. It has nothing to do with our sections. This is a personal grudge between me and him. Please forgive me if I'm overboard. The stifled Sect Master Liang, the Heavenly Tao Sect's Sect Master, Sitimin, laughed. Sect Master Liang, this little fellow came to greet you. Morong Sun also found her disciple unbearably adorable. When she received Liang Wanshan's speechless gaze, she broke into laughter and said, I really don't know why. However, this disciple of mine has always said whatever she wants to say. If she says that she has a grudge against your virtue, then that's it. Since it's a personal grudge, this sect master shouldn't interfere too much. Liang Wanshan was also speechless. It's just that Muliangda isn't as ordinary as you think. Liang Wanshan said hesitantly, you might not be able to defeat him. Sect Master Liang, don't worry. I'll definitely kill him. The little fellow swore and ran off. Liang Wanshan had a stifled look on his face. Why am I getting more and more worried? Everyone burst into laughter. Why did it sound like Sect Master Liang was going to kill Muliangda in the end and even told the Sect Master not to worry? It was too comical. Arbor ran back to Mo Lien's side and told Duan Yu after sitting down, I just greeted your Sect Master. I said that I'll kill Muliangda in a moment, and he agreed. Everyone looked at her like she was a little oddball and simply didn't know what to say. Duan Yu immediately lost his integrity and encouraged, Jojo, do your best. You can do it. Mo Lien, young man, where's your integrity? You're too shameless. Chapter 435. For the next 2 matches, they stopped after a certain point and were relatively harmonious. Xue Xiao and Bai Li Shi fought, and Bai Li Shi won. Wei Nanfeng and a Purple Firmament faction disciple fought, and Wei Nanfeng won. The 4th match was Arbor and Muliangda's match. The two were silent the entire time as they ascended the stage. They looked at each other and didn't speak for a long time. I heard that you're also a talisman practitioner. Let me experience it. It was rare for Arbor to be in the mood to speak before the battle. Muliangda's face was gentle as he courteously bowed to Arbor. Little junior sister, you should make the first move. You can summon that snow leopard of yours first. Just use the talismans when I tell you to. You like to talk so much nonsense. If you won't use it, I'll use it. Arbor swung her hand, and a row of talismans flew out and suddenly leaped in front of Muliangda. Muliangda's eyes abruptly constricted. He raised his dumbfounded face and foolishly looked at the little girl who suddenly made a move. What was going on? Muliangda was truly dumbfounded. Ever since he left Guanlan City's main residence, he really hadn't seen anyone who could throw out so many talismans in one go in all these years. His first thought was, is it fake? However, that row of talismans all gathered around him and abruptly tightened. Binding Talisman Matrix. Our dear Xiao Mu had long planned out how to deal with this Muliangda. Wasn't this person a talisman practitioner? Then she would use talisman matrices to deal with him and let him die a worthy death. However, she seemed to have overestimated this Muliangda. Staring at Muliangda, who was flustered in the binding talisman matrix and continuously using his shoulder and elbow to strike left and right, Arbor's eyes narrowed in displeasure. She asked in an extremely dissatisfied tone, are you really a talisman practitioner? Why can't you even crack such a simple binding talisman matrix? This kind of binding talisman matrix was one of the more basic types of talisman matrices, and it only used beginner talismans. Even so, she could make Muliangda, a talisman practitioner, into such a sorry state. Arbor couldn't help but suspect that the person in front of her might just be a fake. Mulyangda's expression truly changed. Binding Talisman Matrix, this was actually the Binding Talisman Matrix that Patriarch once sighed and yearned for? Why did this girl know how to use talisman matrices? Ah! What's going on? None of the talisman patrician families in Guanlan City knew how to use the talisman array. How could this young lady use it? Mulyangda couldn't believe his eyes. Moreover, from the girl's tone, it seemed that this binding glyph array was only the most basic glyph array to her. Who was she? Hurry up and use your talisman. Arbor glared at him unhappily. You don't have to go easy on me. Which eye of yours saw me going easy on you? Thus, a hilarious scene appeared on the stage. The little girl stood at the side of the stage and glared at Mulyangda, who was trapped in the binding talisman array. What are you doing? Come out. Mulyangda was speechless. Under the little fellow's repeated urging, he couldn't help but say angrily, "Little girl, don't go overboard in everything you do. Even if our patriarch were to come, he might not be able to immediately decipher this talisman formation of yours. What's more, it's just me." Xiao Mu creased her brows, truly dissatisfied to the extreme in her heart. She had originally thought that if this guy was a talisman expert, she wouldn't kill him first. She would first exchange a few pointers with him, then kill him. Hearing him say this, she felt uncomfortable all over, and the fury in her heart surged. You big liar! Go to hell! Countless talismans flew out with a whoosh. He even said that he was a talisman practitioner. This stinky, shameless liar. Just looking at him made her angry. How dare he lie to her? What a waste of time! Everyone, Chapter 436. Liar, she really wanted to kill him. However, she also really wanted to test the power of other talisman masters. She had never competed with other talisman masters in all her years of drawing talismans. It felt so novel and she really wanted to give it a try. Countless talismans flew out from under her sleeves and floated in front of the stupefied Mulyangda. Fuck. What the hell was this? Where did this girl get so many talismans? Mulyangda's eyes were dazed, and his mind was in a mess. These talismans floating in front of him were engraved with runes that he could not understand at all. No, he could understand a few of them. He understood the beginner-level speed talisman, the beginner-level strength talisman, and the beginner-level safety talisman. However, he actually could not understand a single one of the mysterious runes on the remaining 200 or so talismans. Heavens, although he was only from a side branch of the talisman patrician family, he had studied in the main family for a period of time after all, so he knew the general standard of talisman masters. Although there was no lack of people who were more talented and intelligent than him, he was definitely not the worst. But now, he felt that the talismans he drew were just a pile of shit in front of the little girl's talismans. The onlookers were simply speechless. Why was this scene so funny? What happened to the promised fierce battle? Why did they only see a circle of floating talismans surrounding Mulyangda? The latter was like a clown, bumping around in this circle of talismans, but no matter what he did, he was unable to shake off that circle of talismans. The funniest thing was that the little fellow was actually anxious outside the circle of talismans and repeatedly urged others to quickly come out. You didn't throw this talisman array at others? You're anxious now. The onlookers were speechless. They asked themselves honestly, if any of them were in Mulyangda's position, they would definitely not feel good and would definitely be driven crazy. Take out your talismans, hurry up. The little girl pulled a long face as she impatiently glared at Mulyangda, who was trapped in the binding talisman array. You! Mulyangda was about to go crazy from anger. Was this girl born to piss people off? Now that he was trapped in this talisman array, there was nothing he could do. Even if he took out talismans, he couldn't throw them out of this talisman array. He was completely bound in this area. Mulyangda felt that this girl was doing it on purpose. She said that on purpose to trample on his pride and dignity. Arbor's black eyes widened. He was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet. Was this person an idiot? Why did it feel like that idiot was speaking to him in a completely different world? She had already asked him to take out his talisman, so why didn't he do so? She really wanted to see what other talisman masters were like. She urgently wanted to know what level she, as an intermediate level symbol master, was at among the symbol masters. She was so angry that Muliangda, this stupid fellow, couldn't even fulfill such a small wish for her. A Violet Firmament faction disciple who was closest to the arena kindly reminded her, "Little junior sister, I think that Muliangda probably can't walk out of the talisman array you set up. If you want him to come out, then remove the talisman array." The battle between the two of them made the onlookers anxious. "You're so stupid. How can you not even crack such a basic binding talisman array? You're definitely not a talisman master. You big liar. You fooled everyone in Daybreak sect," our dear Xiao Mu angrily said. Chapter 437. Arbor's words immediately enraged Muliangda so much that his lungs were about to explode. How was he not a talisman practitioner? He was an orthodox talisman practitioner, all right. He came from a prestigious family. What kind of joke was this? Muliangda furiously took out 7 to 8 talismans from his inner world and flung them one by one at Arbor. "I'm a talisman practitioner. I'm a talisman practitioner from Guanlon City's Mu family. What would a little girl like you know?" Arbor scooped up those yellow talismans and carefully examined them one by one. She was so angry that she threw them all to the ground and stomped on them indignantly. "You liar. I knew how to draw these lousy beginner-level talismans when I was 7 years old. You still want to lie to me? You clearly stole these beginner-level talismans from who knows where, and you still dare to say that you drew them yourself. Shameless." Muliangda widened his eyes. However, the onlookers only felt that this scene was extremely exciting. From little junior sister's words, they completely understood one thing: she knew how to draw talismans when she was only 7 years old and was still a baby. Of course, Muliangda also understood. He stuttered in shock, You? Who is your master?" Arbor looked at Muliangda with disappointment. Her wish to spar with a talisman practitioner was completely dashed. Fortunately, she actively accepted the challenge last night and even drew 200 different talismans. What use was that? She had already completely lost the mood to talk now. Mo Lien was all too familiar with this expression of hers. With one look, she knew that the little fellow wouldn't be able to talk anymore. Sure enough, she suddenly released her small hand and threw a little chick into the air. At the same time, she summoned a ferrule from her conscious and swung it straight at Muliangda without another word. The 60 binding talismans moved again and circled around Muliangda with a whoosh. Greatly alarmed, Muliangda hurriedly dodged and shouted, "Mystic beast, come out!" Shriek! A shrill shriek came from midair, and the large cyan blue bird swooped down and spat out a large cloud of icy mist. In a single exchange, it froze the mystic beast that Muliangda had just summoned into a layer of frost. Then, it lightly waved its sharp claws. With a soft "pu" sound, the Xian beast that was sealed in the snow was immediately smashed into pieces by the Qing Luan's claw and fell to the ground. This time, everyone was really shocked. Wei Nanfeng rolled and jumped up from the stool, his eyes staring straight as he subconsciously waved the distinguished scholar fan in his hand, muttering incessantly, "Savage, savage. What kind of Xian beast was this? This little girl is too scary. Amazing, amazing." Princess Mi, who was at the side, slapped her thigh and cheered. "This is what a hot-blooded battle is like. Ha ha ha." Muliangda's expression completely changed. He suddenly felt a terrifying aura of death approaching. The binding glyph array once again encircled his body. At the same time, the little girl had already raised her fist and rushed in front of him. Boom! A fist wrapped in dense profound energy directly bombarded Muliangda's body. Muliangda blocked with a backhand, but due to the binding glyph array, most of his profound energy was restrained and unable to be used. As a result, he didn't even receive the little girl's first punch and directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew out backwards. The little fellow chased after him and swung her fist again. Another fist wrapped in profound energy. This time, it directly hammered a large hole in the arena, trapping Mu Liangde inside. Chapter 438. Immediately after a series of explosions, everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the new hole in the stage, but Mu Liangde had already disappeared. From the looks of it, he should have completely fallen into that hole. The little girl expressionlessly stood at the edge of the hole and stared at Xixia Valley's Valley Master, who had flown onto the stage, for a while. Xixia Valley's Valley Master speechlessly stared at her for a long time before ordering 2 disciples to go forward and carry Mu Liangde out of the hole. The onlookers couldn't help but be stupefied when they took a closer look. How could Mu Liangde's former graceful and exuberant face be seen? His entire face was even fatter than a pig's head, and his entire body was covered in blood. You! Mu Liangde was hanging on by a thread as he glared at Arbor with his eyes that had swollen into slits. He couldn't spit out another word for a long time. Mu Liangde, do you still remember Qiao Zhongbang, who entered Daybreak's sect at the same time as you? Arbor asked in a clear and cold voice as she stood with her hands behind her back. Qiao Zhongbang. Qiao Zhongbang. He didn't know how many years it had been since someone had mentioned this name to him. That youth who came from the countryside, that youth who was quite talented and was quite well liked by his master back then. His age was about the same as his, so he should be in his 30s now. This little girl was called Arbor. Realization suddenly dawned on Mu Liangde, and he struggled to raise his head from the stretcher. His deformed face was slightly contorted as he strenuously enunciated each word. You're Qiao Zhongbang's daughter. That's right. Arbor nodded and looked at him solemnly. Back then, you saw that my father's talent was better than yours, so you were afraid that he would steal your limelight in front of Wei Cheng. Thus, you secretly poisoned him and damaged his mystic meridians, causing him to be driven out by Wei Cheng. I am Qiao Zhongbang's daughter. I came to avenge my father. Do you have any objections? Everyone. Could he say anything if he had any objections? Could he beg for mercy if he had any objections? The little girl didn't wait for Mu Liangde to continue speaking and continued, since you don't have any objections, you can go on your way with peace of mind. Wait. Mu Liangde narrowed his swollen eyes and coughed. You dare to kill me? I am a member of Guanlan City's Mu clan. My clan's background is so powerful, how dare you? Ah! Before Mu Liangde could finish his nonsense, the little girl waved her small hand and directly threw a handful of colorless and odorless powder at him. What happened afterwards really was only a fleeting moment. It was so fast that even Xixia Valley's Valley Master, who was standing beside Mu Liangde, couldn't react in time. Mu Liangde, who was half sitting on the stretcher, rolled off the stretcher in pain. He covered his face with both hands and howled incessantly. After rolling on the arena for a while, his voice completely disappeared, and his entire person lay upright on the arena. Arbor's small face was stoic as he looked at Mu Liangde and shook his head in disappointment. I thought that you would at least be able to resist for a moment because of your research on poisons. Yet unexpectedly, he couldn't even resist for 2 minutes. He reckoned that he had also brought that bag of vicious medicinal powder from his home back then. Did he think that he could be so awesome just because he had a powerful clan background? Wasn't he just a weakling at the mercy of others? Xixia Valley's Valley Master glared at the little girl in front of him and was tongue-tied for a long time. He couldn't help but say angrily, "Little girl, the results of the competition were already out just now. You shouldn't have poisoned him and poisoned him to death." Arbor blinked. Didn't he die from his severe injuries? Chapter 439. Xixia Valley's Valley Master was simply infuriated by this child and glared at her back for a while before ordering people to carry Mu Liangde away. It was just that the deep hole in the arena could not be repaired right away. After the top 10 competition's name list was released, each of the 3 sects had 2 disciples qualified. Just based on the number of people, it was a complete victory. Ghost Faction and Myriad Faction's disciples were eliminated. Only Purple Firmament Faction had 2 people qualified, while Coitus Faction and Omni Faction each had 1 person qualified. They were Coitus Faction's Chi Mei and Omni Faction's Ning Bihuan. Unfortunately, the next match was Omni Faction's Ning Bihuan versus Coitus Faction's Chi Mei. After Ning Bihuan ascended the stage, she hugged her silver spear and stood there with a dark expression. Although her face was not much different from her younger sister, Ning Baifan's, it was much gloomier than Ning Baifan's. She looked like someone owed her several million yuan all day long. Fortunately, she did not talk much and was not as annoying as her younger sister. After the little girl poisoned Mu Liangde to death, she was in a good mood and sat there listening to her senior sister's gossip. They were talking about Coitus Faction's Granny Witch. I asked around. The reason Granny Witch hated Eldest Antmaster so much was because her face was disfigured by Eldest Antmaster back then. Chang Yushi was like an information broker, showing off the first-hand information she just obtained. Where did you ask around? As Murong Sun's eldest disciple, Su Shanshan did not know her master had such a story. Xue Xiao couldn't resist laughing. Where else could she ask around? Second Antmaster most likely told her. Chang Yushi rubbed her hands and giggled mischievously. Then do you want to hear it? Tell us quickly. The senior sisters hastily urged Chang Yushi not to keep them in suspense when they heard such an interesting story. At this time, a purple talisman floated in front of the little girl's eyes. She took out several cans of snacks and fruit in succession and distributed them to the senior sisters. The senior sisters couldn't help but be amused. Oh my, look at their little junior sister. She took out food as soon as she heard a story. Although she didn't say it, she was definitely 120% curious about their master's story. When the disciples from the other 2 sects who were close to each other saw the little fellow handing out food, they also came over to divide it up. It was supposed to be a martial arts competition, but they made it seem like a gathering of the masses. Let me tell you, didn't Granny Witch from the Joyous sect capture many beautiful men as vessels back then? As he said this, his finger continuously pointed at Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, Duan Yu, and the others who had come forward. People like this, and this, they're definitely targets for Granny Witch to capture. The handsome men all had innocent looks on their faces. The demonic art she practices is to absorb people's yang energy. The little girl silently took a bite of the apple and raised her head to look at Chang Yushi, who was getting more and more ridiculous with her words. She silently turned her head away. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh as she glanced at her. She raised her hand to remove a small piece of fruit peel from the corner of her lips. In short, she's using people as vessels to refine that thing in other people's bodies, such as profound energy and profound energy, to increase her own profound energy. It's said that it can even preserve her youth and beauty. Chang Yushi finally hit the nail on the head and vividly described, that night, it was a dark and windy night. Granny Witch captured several beautiful men and was at the critical juncture of absorbing their mystic energy. Eldest Antmaster suddenly broke through the window and entered. Pfft. Chapter 440. Just hearing Chang Yushi's description was quite comical, so it could be imagined how delightful that scene was back then. After Eldest Antmaster broke the window and entered, she yelled, "I'm about to die." How did you know that Eldest Antmaster yelled, "I'm about to die"? Right. How did you know? Everyone asked curiously. Second Antmaster must have made it up. Xue Xiao pursed her lips and said with a smile. How is that making it up? Chang Yushi glared at her. Eldest Antmaster yelled, "I'm about to die," and then rushed up. She lifted Granny Witch, who was at the critical juncture of her cultivation, and gave her a violent beating. And then? Everyone's eyes turned round as they questioned her curiously. What else is there? Apparently, Eldest Antmaster broke Granny Witch's cultivation on the spot. Her fair, tender, and juicy face turned into her current appearance in minutes. Chicken skin and crane hair, tsk. She's very different from her past self. Chang Yushi spoke too loudly. So much so that Granny Witch and the rest all heard her, and they shot stern gazes in their direction. The Holy Water Sect's senior and junior sisters stuck out their tongues in laughter. They all pretended not to see the coitus faction's man-eating expression and averted their gazes. Everyone lowered their voices and continued to laugh and chat for a while. They all thought that it was no wonder Granny Witch looked like she wanted to eat someone when she saw eldest Aunt Master. It turned out that there was such a thing going on. At this time, after everyone finished gossiping, they finally discovered that Ning Bihuan had been standing alone on the stage for quite a while. At this time, Ning Bihuan hugged her silver spear and asked impatiently, "Is that coitus faction's Chi Mei coming to compete or not? If she doesn't want to compete, then treat it as a forfeit and directly announce the results." However, Granny Witch's expression was very unsightly. Her expression was already unsightly enough when everyone in the Holy Water Sect knew about her gossip just now. At this time, Mei only went to relieve herself, but she was even more displeased that she still hadn't returned. After a while, when Ning Bihuan was already so impatient that she wanted Shixia Valley's Valley Master to announce the results again, a figure wrapped in a black cloak suddenly jumped onto the stage. At first glance, Granny Witch discovered that the person under the cloak wasn't her disciple Chi Mei. She stood up at once and berated with a slightly grave expression, "Who are you? You're not Mei. What did you do to Mei? The people from the other sects were naturally not familiar with Chi Mei. When they heard what Granny Witch said, they could not help but feel a little strange. Why were there still people rushing to replace Chi Mei in the arena to fight Ning Bihuan? Ning Bihuan wasn't an easy bone to chew on. However, the person on stage didn't say much, and directly sent out a wave of profound energy towards Ning Bihuan. Ning Bihuan raised her eyebrows. She raised her silver spear and charged forward. The two of them exchanged dozens of blows. Ning Bihuan curled her lips and coldly said, "Who the hell are you? You're not a disciple of Coitus sect, are you?" The person who came did not make a sound. However, Morong Sun had already recognized the person at this time. Her face instantly darkened, and her complexion was quite unsightly. Yang Shirong looked at her expression and asked curiously, "What's wrong, senior sister?" "It was Ling Min," Morong Sun said coldly. "What?" The two peak masters couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. They all knew that Morong Sun did not bring Yi Ling Min with her on this trip, so her sudden appearance meant that she escaped from Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff. Chapter 441. Yi Lingmin actually escaped from Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff on her own and entered the arena to compete without permission. Her guts were already abnormally big. At this time, Coitus faction's Chi Mei ran over, flustered and exasperated. Everyone turned to look and saw that unlucky woman's stench wafting over, as if she had crawled out of a cesspit. "Master, that person, she..." Chi Mei was so drunk from her own stench that she cried. How could she have known that when she went to relieve herself normally, someone actually covered her head with a sack from behind and beat her up? Her entire body was covered with the smell of feces and urine. Too infuriating, truly infuriating. Disaster fell from the sky when she was relieving herself. This kind of luck was indeed unparalleled. Everyone looked at this stinky girl with sympathetic gazes. Even her master, Granny Witch, disliked her stench and hurriedly avoided her when she walked over. It was truly an unexpected disaster with overwhelming bad luck. Such a delicate beauty coughing and stinking of urine truly didn't smell good. "Hurry up and go wash up," Granny Witch angrily rebuked. She still dared to make a fool of herself in front of others with such a pestilence appearance. Her old face was completely thrown away by this idiot. "Senior sister, I'll accompany you to wash up." Chi Hua who was dressed in plain clothes and only had a small pink beaded flower on her head, walked over and draped a robe over the stinky Chi Mei Chi Mei also knew that if she continued to stand here, she would definitely be an eyesore to her master. Hearing this, she could only follow Chi Hua to wash up and change clothes, hating the woman who snatched the arena from her to the bone. The two of them didn't walk far when they saw a hunchbacked old man being supported over. To avoid the old man's disdain, Chi Hua hurriedly pulled her senior sister a little closer and left after casting a glance out of the corner of her eye. "Sir, those two are disciples of Coitus faction," Chiu Sen whispered. "Vulgar women, withered flowers and withered willows." Lu Yizhi coughed a few times and stood still, his cold gaze fixed on the arena. "My lord, the strength of these two lower domain disciples is comparable to our soldiers," Chiu San said. "Humph, he's just an outer court soldier material and doesn't even have the qualifications to guard the inner court." Lu Yizhi's eyes were full of disdain. Suddenly, Lu Yizhi's body stiffened, and his expression changed slightly because Mo Lian and Arbor both turned their heads and gazed coldly at them. At the same time, Duan Yu also turned around with a grin and raised his brow. His gaze swept over Lu Yizhi and Chiu San before withdrawing. Lu Yizhi didn't see Duan Yu and Peng Zhang's battle, so he didn't know how strong this youth was. However, he had a deep impression of Mo Lian. A youth who could control a powerful fire spirit, even he did not dare to easily offend him. At this moment, they were very far away from the arena, but even so, those three people could still sense them. It had to be said that even Lu Yizhi was surprised by their sharp acuity. At this time, the competition on the arena had already entered a white-hot stage. The silver spear in Ning Bihuan's hand suddenly lifted Yi Lingmin's headscarf and cloak, exposing her entire face to everyone. "Senior Sister Yi." Many holy water sect disciples covered their mouths as they exclaimed softly. Yi Lingmin was holding a willow leaf saber. Because her shoulder had been struck by the mystic energy seeping out from the silver spear, her shoulder was already red. She was extremely furious, and her mind was in a mess, so her saber technique was out of order. Chapter 442. She did not spend so much effort to participate in the competition to lose to this woman in front of her. She wanted to prove to her master that not choosing her to participate in the competition was absolutely a wrong decision. Ning Bihuan creased her brows and coldly said, "Admit defeat. I don't want to take your life, so leave the stage yourself." With a shake of her silver spear, she directly sent Yi Lingmin flying. Yi Lingmin rolled 3 times on the stage before plopping down on the ground. Her eyes revealed her unwillingness to admit defeat, and she ferociously glared at Ning Bihuan. "You think you've won for sure?" The two of them did not summon their mystic beasts from beginning to end, as if they had made a pact together. Ning Bihuan shook her head. "You're a holy water sect disciple, right? You didn't go through the early stages of the competition and directly skipped levels to participate in the finals. This is already against the rules. I didn't bicker with you, so you should quit while you're ahead. I'm telling you, you can't win against me." Yi Lingmin's stubborn temper flared up, and she suddenly flipped her hand, pinching a small bottle in her hand. The eyelids of the 3 peak masters sitting in the front seats all twitched. Morong Sun's face darkened, and she had just shouted "Lingmin" when she saw Yi Lingmin uncorking the bottle and drinking the 3 drops of holy water she had preserved until now in one gulp. Holy water sect disciples all knew that holy water was most effective and improved the fastest when it was consumed for the first and second time. Yi Lingmin had been reluctant to consume it a second time and had been accumulating holy water the entire time. Every time she asked Lady Holy Water for more holy water, she would preserve it until today. She swallowed it all in one gulp. The 3 peak masters' expressions were abnormally unsightly. Soon, all the mystic energy from all directions gathered above Yi Lingmin's head, forming a small vortex of stars that continuously gathered inside her body. Until it completely erupted. Yi Lingmin advanced in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone's eyes were filled with intense incredulity. Everyone knew how difficult and dangerous it was for a great level 10 mystic cultivator to advance to a great level 11 mystic cultivator. But what happened just now? Why did Yi Lingmin suddenly break through the barrier of great level 10 mystic cultivator? Before everyone could react, Yi Lingmin had already jumped up on the spot and energetically swung her saber. The lancet spun in the air and whooshed towards Ning Bihuan. Ning Bihuan's silver spear flew up. With a solemn expression, she flicked it at Yi Lingmin's blade. Immediately, she felt her wrists suddenly become heavy and she almost lost her grip on the silver spear. "Let go!" Yi Lingmin shouted in an awe-inspiring manner. She suddenly pulled back her lancet and chopped at Ning Bihuan's left wrist. Ning Bihuan had no choice but to retreat, but the silver spear in her hand was suddenly snatched away by Yi Lingmin. With a kick, she sent it flying. With a whoosh, it landed on the stage and stuck into the ground at an angle. Everyone was silent. Morong Sun's expression was indescribably unsightly. However, Coitus Sect's Granny Witch's eyes were filled with doubt. Could this be the legendary holy water spring of the Holy Water Sect? Its effects were truly so good that one could immediately advance from a level 10 Great Mystic Cultivator to level 11 after drinking a mouthful. Crushing Ning Bihuan, who was also a great level 10 Mystic Cultivator, in a matter of minutes. The godly water was really that effective. I won. Amidst the silent audience, Yi Lingmin raised the lancet in her hand above her head and shouted. On the side, Ning Bihuan clutched her chest and silently glanced at her. She directly walked to her silver spear and pulled it out from the ground. Then, she swiftly jumped off the stage and left. Chapter 443. Xixia Valley's Valley Master was baffled and did not know whether he should go on stage to announce the results of the competition. Seeing that no one else was going up, Yi Lingmin jumped down from the stage and walked straight to Morong Sun. She straightened her neck and bowed to the three peak masters. "Master, Ant Master." Morong Sun's expression was unsightly to the extreme. She coldly stared at Yi Lingmin and did not say anything. She merely stared at her for a long time. This extremely powerful silent stare caused Yi Lingmin to panic. In reality, it would be best if she could enter closed-door cultivation right now. In order to win the competition just now, she swallowed 3 drops of holy water at once and forcefully raised her cultivation to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, obtaining an overwhelming victory. However, in reality, she did not completely assimilate these 3 drops of holy water. If she wanted to completely stabilize her cultivation as a level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, she still needed a period of closed-door cultivation. She merely wanted to win too much. She wanted to display herself in front of her master and obtain her master's approval and affirmation too much. She wanted her master to know that she, Yi Lingmin, her master's 3rd disciple, was not inferior to anyone else. But right now, her master's aloof gaze made her feel afraid from the bottom of her heart. Yi Lingmin quietly called out, "Master." "Lingmin, it's because I don't know how to teach disciples that your willful, reckless, and lawless personality is today." Morong Sun's disappointed gaze made Yi Lingmin's heart tremble. Why was it like this? She won the fight. Why was her master so disappointed in her even though she won? Didn't she win? "Master." Yi Lingmin completely panicked and looked at the other 2 ant masters in a daze. However, the 2 people she saw had the same grave expression. "Master." Yi Lingmin wanted to reach out and grab Morong Sun's sleeve. However, Morong Sun pushed her back 2 steps. She dazedly stood there and looked up at her unfamiliar master in a daze. "From today onward, you are no longer my disciple. You are also no longer a disciple of the Holy Water Sect. Go," Morong Sun said aloofly. As if struck by lightning, Yi Lingmin staggered back 2 steps and looked up at Morong Sun with tear-filled eyes. She could not help but ask, "Why, Master? Why?" 3rd senior sister. The other disciples of First Peak were also dumbfounded. They wanted to surround Morong Sun and dissuade her, but none of them dared to move when they saw Morong Sun's warning gaze. Yi Lingmin suddenly knelt in front of Morong Sun with a plop and wailed, "Master, Master, don't chase me away, Master. Disciple was wrong, Master. Your disciple was disobedient and shouldn't have run away from Duantian Cliff. Master, please forgive me this once. Master, Master, Don't chase your disciple away. Morong Sun had already made up her mind. Even if other people came over to put in a few good words for Yi Lingmin, Morong Sun still insisted on expelling Yi Lingmin from the sect. Master! You can leave. Go back and think about what you did wrong. If you feel guilty in the future, take good care of your former sister when we meet again in the pugilistic world. Morong Sun turned around and did not look at Yi Lingmin again. Master! Yi Lingmin was completely flustered. She turned around and saw Arbor in a daze. She rushed in front of her and grabbed her arm, begging for mercy. Little junior sister, help third senior sister. Little junior sister, go beg master. Master likes you the most. If you speak up for me, she will definitely listen to you. Little junior sister, senior sister is begging you, wah. Chapter 444. Third senior sister. Arbor blinked and looked up at Morong Sun, who was standing on the side with her back facing them. She only felt that Master's back was stiff, as if she was hiding 1,000 things that she couldn't say. Third senior sister, Master is in a fit of anger right now. How about you leave first, and I'll slowly persuade Master? Arbor asked softly. Yi Lingmin glanced at Arbor with teary eyes. Little junior sister, you'll really help me? Arbor nodded solemnly. Sorry. Yi Lingmin didn't expect that her little junior sister, whom she dissed the first time they met, would disregard former enmity and help her. She tightly grasped the little girl's hands and gripped them tightly. She turned around to glance at Morong Sun's cold back and didn't dare to linger any longer, running away in tears. On the other end, Lu Yizhi and Qiu San's figures had long disappeared. Qiu San supported Lu Yizhi as they walked out of the arena. Lu Yizhi was so excited that he couldn't control himself the entire way, and his entire body was trembling lightly. It's not the holy water spring, it definitely isn't the holy water spring. How was this some holy water spring? Just now, he clearly saw that the holy water sect girl in the competition clearly swallowed 3 drops of water. 3 drops. 3 drops of water immediately raised her from level 10 to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. Such a large leap. Ha 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 ha. He was now very clear that the holy water spring was definitely a smokescreen thrown out by the holy water sect to conceal the holy water's true identity. They deceived the world for so many years, ha 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 ha. Great. A tiny lower star domain's holy water sect could actually do whatever they wanted under the 6 prefectures' noses. How audacious. How was this some holy water spring? It was clearly holy water. Speaking of holy water, one had to mention the 5 spirits' origins. Everyone in the 6 prefectures knew that as long as one comprehended one of the 5 spirits' origins when breaking through to level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator, they could smoothly enter a higher realm and achieve the transition from the mystic realm to the spiritual realm. And among the 10 levels of the water origins, the one and only and unparalleled origin among the origins was holy water. Normally, everyone's comprehension of the 5 spirits' origins was between the 1st and the 5th level. Only those with especially good talent could comprehend the origins of the higher levels. What was the holy water? That was the foundation that could crush all the water spirits below the 9th level. Once the Holy Spirit appeared, no one would be able to contend against it. This was the holy water, holy fire, holy wood, holy earth, and holy lightning of the 5 spirit origins. Quickly go and inform all of Shantian Prefecture's forces on Sikong Planet. Immediately travel day and night to the holy water sect outside 5 Moon City. We must obtain the sacred water before the other 5 prefectures. Holy water was such an important item, so the holy water sect definitely wouldn't bring it with them when they went out this time. Presumably, it was currently quietly staying in the holy water sect's secret ground, waiting for their Shantian prefecture to come and harvest it. Ha 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 ha. No, she was waiting for him. Lu Yizhi went to seize it. Yes. Qiu San immediately cupped his fists and left in a hurry. Lu Yizhi looked up at the dark blue sky and narrowed his cold eyes slightly. He coughed several times and sneered. It seems like the weather is about to change. The rest of the competition became dull and boring. Moreover, many people's minds were no longer on the competition. In the end, it was darling Qiao who obtained victory. Why? Because the other top four, such as Duan Yu, Su Shanshan, Situ Yi, and Bailey Shi, couldn't be bothered to fight with her, so she automatically advanced to first place. Chapter 445. However, she did not feel excited or joyful at all. In the end, the three sects won a complete victory, but there was no joy on the Holy Water sect's three peak masters' faces. When she returned to her courtyard, all the senior sisters ran over to give her gifts. They glorified it by saying that little junior sister had won honor for the Holy Water sect, so they gave gifts to the champion. Su Shanshan gave her a level 15 mystic dagger and told her that she took it from Maple Pavilion and that it was quite handy. Arbor's intuition was a bit strange. Her senior sisters all ran over to give her gifts, and they were all very valuable. What happened? Arbor asked seriously. What could happen? Yang Shirong smiled and said, My little disciple. You've been in the sect for so many years, but you've never returned home. How about you go home and take a look this time? Arbor nodded. She also had this plan, but she had more or less assimilated her essence water recently, so she could not suppress her cultivation anymore. She planned to find a place to raise her cultivation before going home. Master, are you still angry at third senior sister? Arbor walked to Murong Sun and tugged on her sleeve. Can't forgive her. You know what kind of person she is. Master always knew that she was unyielding and competitive, but why was she so angry today? Arbor felt that she must have overlooked something. Suddenly, a thought struck her, and Arbor hastily asked, Is it the holy water? Because third senior sister used holy water on the spot and attracted attention? Then what about the sect's master and senior sisters? Arbor only felt that things were a bit off. Silly child, what could happen? Murong Sun said with a smile, Don't let your imagination run wild. Go rest early. The other sects have to leave Dwelling Valley tomorrow morning. We also have to leave. Child, you haven't returned for so many years, so your parents must be worried. Stay at home for a while when you go back this time. You don't have to rush back since there's nothing going on in the sect anyway. Murong Sun tugged on Arbor's hand and quietly instructed, Being outside is different from being in the sect. Be careful of everything and take good care of yourself along the way. Young Master Mo is here, Su Shanshan said. Arbor walked out, a little unhappy. Mo Lien took her little hand and squeezed it. What's wrong? Because I'm leaving tomorrow. Can't bear to part with me? The little fellow was not in the mood to talk and laugh. She looked up at him sullenly. He suddenly thought of something and rummaged through his purple amulet. He took out a small rectangular iron box and threw it to Mo Lien. I don't know how to open this. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. She lowered her head to look at the small rectangular metal box. It was cast so tightly that there wasn't a single opening. Duan, you should know. The little fellow was still a bit sullen. Help me hand it to him so he can study it. If you go back to the sect, then we'll have to go our separate ways tomorrow. Don't leave me with a sour-gourd face. The only thing I can't forget is your little sour-gourd face. Mo Lien suddenly reached out to lift her small face. Chow Chow, give me a serious smile. I really haven't seen you smile in all these years. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. How could she smile for no reason? How about I tell you a joke for you to smile? Mo Lien reached out to tease her little face. Go ahead. The little stoic was not happy at all. Once upon a time, there was a bad guy called Duan Yu. One day, he was beaten to death by a good person called Mo Lien. Arbor. Chapter 446. It really was hilarious. Arbor glanced at him and poked his chest with his finger. It's not funny. Mo Lien reached out and pulled the little fellow into her arms, chuckling softly as she hugged her. Suddenly, an indignant voice came from the door. Duan Yu dashed over and shouted in a huff, "Of course it's not funny. Jojo, don't listen to his nonsense. I'm an incomparably good person." Incomparably good? Mo Lien threw him a slightly disdainful look before casually smashing that small rectangular metal box at his head. Duan Yu was so angry that he wanted to send it flying with a kick. However, just as his foot was about to touch the small metal box, Mo Lien's voice leisurely rang out, "Jojo's." Duan Yu staggered, and his kick abruptly changed into a grab. His movements were practiced and smooth as he snatched the small lousy box into his hand. "This should be a concealed weapon box," Mo Lien said dryly. Duan Yu smugly looked up and cast him a sidelong glance. He snorted and waved the small metal box in his hand, bragging, "Don't tell me it's broken. Let me tell you, this concealed weapon box is a sealing technique passed down from ancient times. Normal people absolutely can't open the seal on the outside. I'm 99% certain that there's good stuff inside." This small metal box had troubled darling Qiao for many years. When she had nothing to do, she would fiddle with it in her hands. She had soaked it in water, roasted it in fire, and even pricked it with a needle before throwing it into a frying pan. Cough, cough. Now that she heard Duan Yu's words, the little fellow pattered over to him with great interest and urged repeatedly, "Hurry and open it. You can open it too." Duan Yu tossed the small metal box and pulled Arbor to his side with one hand. He said with a chuckle, "You have to call me Big Brother." Classmate Mo's face darkened. Duan Yu, that punk, really knew how to push his luck. He originally thought that the icy little fellow would refuse, so Duan Yu was only joking. Who would have thought that the next second, darling Qiao straightforwardly called him Big Brother in a clear and crisp voice. She even impatiently tugged at his sleeve. "Let's go." Duan Yu was taken aback. Mo Lien was furious. His handsome face was ashen as he reached out and pulled the little fellow into his arms. His entire body was filled with low pressure. No matter how slow-witted Xiao Mu was, she could still feel the displeasure that filled her entire body. The little fellow lifted his head from his arms and looked at his expression in bewilderment. He asked in astonishment, "What's wrong?" "You called him brother." Mo Lien gritted her teeth. Arbor nodded and turned his stoic face to look at the foolishly smiling Duan Yu. He asked with a frown, "What's wrong with him? If it's not my brother, then is it my sister?" Mo Lien. Why am I speechless? Mo Lien's shoulders trembled, and she lowered her head to hug the little lady with a stifled chuckle. For a moment, she couldn't restrain her laughter. His darling was still young. When Duan Yu returned to his senses and heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He glanced at Mo Lien and harumphed. "What are you laughing at? If I'm the older sister, then you're also the older sister. TSK. Do you think that face of yours is inferior to mine when it comes to pretending to be a girl? Bah! Who's a girl? Your whole family is made up of girls. Jojo, let's go. Don't get touchy. Lead the way." Mo Lien swatted away Duan Yu's restless paw, which earned Duan Yu's furious glare. Chapter 447. The three of them shifted to another room and sat down. After placing the small metal box on the table, Duan Yu took out a dozen or so exquisite tools from his inner world. The little girl propped up her cheeks with both hands as she curiously watched Duan Yu work with her dark eyes. She really couldn't come up with something like this. She was a bit angry just thinking about it. With her brilliant brain, she couldn't even open a concealed weapon box. It was truly infuriating. This kind of concealed weapon box that has been passed down since ancient times was sealed by the ancestors using a kind of pouring technique. It can't be opened even if you slash it with a sword, soak it in water, or burn it with fire. When Duan Yu said this, he reflexively looked up at Miss Qiao and discovered a strange expression on her face. Duan Yu couldn't help chuckling in spite of himself. Eh? Don't tell me you've already used all the methods I've just mentioned. As he said this, he couldn't help coughing several times while stifling his laughter. Darling Chow harumphed and rolled her eyes at him. Ha 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 ha. Duan Yu couldn't hold back his hearty laughter. Blame her for being uncultured. Now that she was being laughed at, Xiao Mu simply turned her face aside. However, she saw that although Mo Lien didn't laugh out loud like the dunce Duan Yu, he still couldn't conceal the smile in his eyes. That smile was practically flowing out from his pair of slightly curved phoenix eyes. Tisk, Duan Yu controlled his laughter and quickly placated the little fellow. You can't be blamed for being stupid. Our dear Xiao Mu's eyes widened. This darling wasn't stupid to begin with. Only the Duan family of Guanlon City knows a thing or two about this kind of pouring technique. However, they also don't know how to unseal it. That family head of theirs is absolutely stupid. Even after learning concealed weapons for so many years, he probably can't open it. Duan Yu pursed his lips in disdain when he recalled the faces of those people from the Duan family. Arbor quickly urged, hurry up and do it. Don't tell me you're going to waste time until daybreak. Duan Yu's smile faded and he lowered his head to take the small metal box in his hand. He took out a small pointed awl forged from ice crystals and lightly fiddled with the four corners of the metal box. She didn't see how he did it, but his movements were so practiced that it dazzled the eyes. There was only a light click sound. There was a small hole in the top of the small iron box that was so tightly sealed that there wasn't even the slightest gap. The three heads immediately gathered together, and Duan Yu simply stood up with a half-bent waist. He turned the small metal box upside down and picked up a small metal bowl in passing. A stream of corrosive liquid flowed out of the small hole, and when it fell into the small iron bowl, it made a sizzling sound. Wow, that hidden weapon master used poison to seal this hidden weapon box. Arbor recalled that she had thrown this thing into the frying pan. Cough, cough, cough. Fortunately, this concealed weapon master's craftsmanship was exceptional. Otherwise, wouldn't Fat Sis's 30-year-old family heirloom have been ruined? Duan Yu couldn't help teasing her when he saw the little fellow's odd expression while his hands busied themselves. What? Did you fry it in a pot of oil? Baby Chow. Why am I suddenly speechless? The two youths looked at her little face and couldn't help but burst into laughter. You really did bomb before? Humph. Arbor propped up her chin with both hands and simply turned her head to the side to ignore them. Duan Yu's movements were rather fast. As he spoke, he had already poured out all the corrosive poison from the small hole. Then, he took out a long and thin needle. His eyes were focused, and his movements were extremely slow as he inserted the needle. Chapter 448. Arbor nervously held her breath. Was this strange little iron box that had perplexed her for so many years finally going to be solved? Her large, dark eyes emitted a joyous glint. Crack, 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 crack. Duan Yu put down the needles in his hand and quickly placed the little iron box flat on the table. His eyes narrowed as he looked at it. The sound of a delicate spring opening could be heard from the iron box's interior. Suddenly, the two youths reached out at the same time and pulled Arbor to her feet, dragging her backward. This curious darling was stretching out her large head at the time and was caught off guard, causing her to topple backward. Mo Lien swiftly caught her and carried her up by the waist before swiftly retreating out the door. Just as the three of them stepped out of the door, Mo Lien hugged the little fellow tightly in her arms and pressed her down, causing the three of them to lie down on the ground together. They then heard an earth-shattering explosion from inside the door. The perfectly fine door was instantly blown into pieces and completely destroyed. Not only did it alarm everyone from the 3 sects and 5 factions, it even scared Shixia Valley's Valley Master to the point of jumping up from his stool and roaring angrily, "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" Shixia Valley's Valley Master was shocked to the point of jumping up from his chair and roaring angrily, "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" He had already swiftly dashed out the door towards the source of the sound. When the 3 sects and 5 factions, as well as Shixia Valley's large group of disciples, rushed to the door of this room, they saw that the room was in a complete mess. After the explosion, Mo Lien and the other two promptly scooped up the metal box that had been blown out of the door and hastily ran away. Who would still foolishly stay in the same spot and wait for someone to berate them? At this time, they were running and flying, only stopping when they were far away from the southern courtyard. This place was a secluded cave in Shixia Valley that was usually uninhabited. The three of them finally sighed in relief and exchanged glances. Arbor couldn't help but be amused by this glance. The two handsome youths, who had always tidied themselves up neatly, were now covered in dirt, as if they had jumped out from some corner of the earth. Their long hair was messy, and there was a lot of mud on their faces, making them look funny. Mo Lien's white robe was covered in dust. Her entire body was covered in dust. Duan Yu wasn't that good-looking either. His brocade robe's collar was covered in small clumps of dirt, and he was trembling as he stood there. Ha 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 ha. A clear and melodious laughter that was both familiar and somewhat unfamiliar suddenly rang out. The two youths who were tidying up their clothes suddenly turned their heads, their eyes widening at the same time as they looked in shock at the little girl in front of them who was holding her stomach and laughing. Mo Lien, who had recovered her wits, flew to the little girl with a whoosh and scooped her into a hug. She excitedly murmured as she hugged her, "Jojo, you smiled, Jojo, you smiled, you smiled." It was no longer that cold and stiff smile that cracked the corners of her mouth, nor was it that expressionless little stoic face. She really smiled. Her smile was so lively and adorable as snow. In that instant, Mo Lien only felt as if the entire world had been lit up by her. The grayish-white color suddenly turned into a myriad of colors, and it was extremely beautiful. The slow-witted Duan Yu didn't manage to snatch the little girl, so he circled around the two of them and stretched out his hand, shouting, "Hurry and move aside, move aside." He hadn't seen the little girl smile so happily for half his life. Now that he finally saw it, he only saw it for a second before that rascal Mo Lien blocked him. Truly too hateful. Chapter 449. Jojo. Mo Lien reached out to cup the little girl's small face, which still carried a trace of a smile. He lowered his head and nuzzled her smooth forehead, saying, "I hope that you will always be like this in the future, happy and happy." It would be even better if she had a permanent smile. Duan Yu couldn't snatch the little girl and could only glare from the side, but he still nodded when he heard this. Although that guy was very hateful, his words seemed to make sense, so he reluctantly agreed. Arbor suddenly reached out to pinch a speck of mud from Mo Lien's face and shouted unhappily, "The mud on your face got on my face." Pfft. Ha ha ha. This time, it was Duan Yu's turn to be amused, and he guffawed while pointing at Mo Lien. Mo Lien simply shamelessly picked up the little girl and purposely rubbed against her face. "Right, we're all muddy, so you should join us too." Right, this is called enjoying blessings and enduring misfortune together." Duan Yu interjected. Arbor actually guffawed, his pair of dark eyes brimming with mirth as he gazed at Mo Lien like this. It was as if the haze in his heart had dispersed by quite a bit. "Jojo." Mo Lien caressed her small face, unable to contain the smile on her lips. "Thankfully, we slipped away quickly. Otherwise, if we encountered Old Man Shixia, we would have been nagged by him again." Duan Yu exclaimed as he patted the dust off his sleeves. Mo Lien turned around to glare at him. "You still have the cheek to say that. You even boasted that you were invincible, as if you could immediately open the concealed weapon box in your hands. Now we're all in such a sorry state." It was an accident." Duan Yu chuckled awkwardly and rubbed his nose. His peach blossom eyes flickered as he cast a bright and charming wink at Arbor. "Don't worry, Jojo, it was just a small spring that wasn't turned on earlier, so it ended up like that. I'll do it again this time, and it'll be done right away." Mo Lien hugged Arbor, and the two jumped back in unison. What are you doing? Don't look at me with such distrust. Trust, you know. Trust. Go. Let's go into the cave and make sure we succeed this time." Duan simply ran to their side and grabbed one in each hand, making the two unwilling people follow him into the cave. Succeed or die trying. The illuminating pearl flew high up in the air, illuminating the cave. Mo Lien pulled Arbor to sit a little further away, closer to the entrance of the cave. It would be more convenient for them to escape later. Why are you sitting so far away? Duan pestered them again and sat down across from them. He picked out a long needle and started fiddling with that hole again. Don't worry, I'm an experienced worker. It really was just a slip of the hand earlier. Duan looked up with a chuckle and winked at Arbor. Jojo, trust, you know. I'm the person you trust the most. Arbor's gaze flickered, and he stared fixedly at the youth. A smile hung on Duan lips as he skillfully inserted the slender needle. His frivolous smile disappeared and replaced it with a serious expression as he cracked the spring that fit the inside. Kacha, 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 kacha. Several sounds rang out in succession, and Arbor's heart was pulled by these sounds, and his small face was filled with anxiety. Mo Lien patted his back to comfort him. Suddenly, they heard a very light and crisp crack right next to their ears. The small metal box suddenly peeled open like a flower petal, revealing a transparent, crystalline square box inside. Chapter 450. Through the transparent crystal, one could see a thin piece of paper swaying in the crystal, rolling up and unrolling. It was very lively. What is this? Arbor exclaimed. The Tianji treasure blueprint. The two youths exclaimed in unison, their faces full of shock. What is the Tianji treasure blueprint? Arbor tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Speaking of the Tianji treasure blueprint, we have to talk about this person, Tianji Zi. He was a very impressive trap and concealed weapons master 300 years ago. Duan interrupted, this person was proficient in the art of traps and concealed weapons, and his skills were not simple at all. I was wondering who made this kind of concealed weapon box that had long been lost. So it was him. The art of traps and concealed weapons? Then this whatever map is actually a secret manual on traps and concealed weapons? It was truly bizarre. How did the Holy Water sect even have this thing? Then this thing is definitely useless to me. Arbor was discouraged. She didn't understand traps and concealed weapons, so what did she need this thing for? Here you go. Take it and study it. The little fellow unhappily pushed that transparent crystal towards Mo Lien and Duan. The two youths couldn't help but laugh. Jojo, do you know that if news of this Tianji treasure blueprint leaked out, it would cause a commotion? Mo Lien helplessly looked at this ignorant little girl. Where did you get it? The little girl was disappointed. To her, it was useless even if it caused a commotion in the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces. A lousy map was completely useless to her. No matter how much of a commotion it caused, it couldn't excite her. When I went to Maple Pavilion to choose mystic techniques, it followed me all the way neurotically. She was depressed at the mention of this. At that time, she was running out of time, and this metal box tricked her just like that. Io. This darling was still unhappy. Duan couldn't help but be amused. Jojo, let me tell you, you really picked up a treasure this time. Really? What? What treasure? To the two youths who liked to study traps and concealed weapons, it was a treasure. But to her, it was just a piece of shit map. Seeing the little girl's gloomy face, the two youths laughed and stopped teasing her. Mo Lien said, Duan is right this time. This really is a treasure. That's because this map itself is a divine artifact that Tianji spent his entire life forging. Ah! Xiao Mu was dumbfounded. This map was a divine artifact. What was a divine artifact? Mo Lien flicked her finger lightly on her little head and couldn't help but chuckle. What the hell is a divine artifact? You don't have to care about that. All you need to know is that he's extremely powerful. Come, be obedient and form a contract with it first. At the same time, I will help you seal the divine artifact and suppress it to a level suitable for your current cultivation. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. But what about the hidden weapon technique inside? She had no use for it. The little fellow asked with a conflicted expression. Stupid. Duan Yu chuckled. Wouldn't it be fine if you formed a contract with it first and then handed the secret manual to us? This is a divine weapon, why are you still hesitating? Hurry, 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 it'll be daybreak if you hesitate any longer. No matter how she looked at it, this thin piece of paper didn't look like a divine weapon at all. Arbor expressionlessly reached out her small hand and stuck it against the outer crystal shell of the map, injecting a wisp of mystic energy. It really was only a small wisp of mystic energy, so small that it was almost negligible, but the entire crystal shell immediately peeled off. The map inside rapidly jumped up and abruptly emitted a dazzling golden light. Allow me to go out for a walk. The rest of the chapter will be even better at night. Chapter 451. The two youths couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this situation. TSK, they completely agreed with Darling Qiao's words this time. Back then, it was definitely this fellow, this Tianji treasure blueprint that kept pestering their darling. Otherwise, how could she be so unreserved? Oh my, you're a divine artifact. Why did you open on your own when she injected just a little bit of mystic energy? The two of them had already secretly decided that when the little girl's mystic energy wasn't enough to form a contract with this divine artifact, they would have to provide mystic energy from the side to support her. However, the situation was just this strange. In less than 3 seconds, the little girl successfully formed a contract with the Tianji treasure blueprint. The Tianji treasure blueprint turned into a shooting star and directly entered her conscious. The two of them stared at her dumbfoundedly for a while. Arbor didn't notice at first because she was using her mystic conscious to examine the Tianji treasure blueprint in her conscious. She couldn't see anything special about it, but after this blueprint unfolded in her conscious, she could casually flip through the mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques inside. After a glance, Darling Qiao lost interest in looking at it. Those mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques were all strange drawings that looked like scribbles. The few words were also abstruse and profound, so who could understand such a ghastly thing? When she returned to her senses, she saw the two youths looking at her with shining eyes in a daze. Our dear Qiaomu simply didn't know that with her pitiful cultivation as a level 8 mystic cultivator, it was basically impossible for her to form a contract with this kind of divine artifact without assistance from the side. He had never seen or heard of such an oddball like her. Ahem. Duan Yu coughed lightly and said with a chuckle, "This is probably fate, right, huh? Isn't that right, Prince Mo?" The Tianji treasure blueprint must have taken a fancy to the little girl. How should he put it? Mo Lian glanced at him and nodded in rare agreement. Qiao Mu was baffled. She didn't even know what the heck they were conversing about. She merely activated her mystic conscious and summoned that Tianji treasure blueprint out from her conscious. The mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques on this are all scribbles. You can see for yourselves. She couldn't understand it anyway. Immediately after, with a move of his profound sense, the Tianji treasure blueprint suddenly unfolded in front of the three of them. It stretched for several meters and was covered in golden light. The diagrams leaped up and floated in front of the three of them. The two youths hurriedly ran over and stood on the left and right sides of the picture. They looked at it for a while with an intoxicated look on their faces. Arbor. Blame her for being uncultured. Jojo, how about I make a copy of it? The two teenagers asked in unison. How? With a flip of their hands, they each took out a piece of jade. Arbor ran over to take a look and hurriedly asked, "Isn't this the underworld jade, something used to pass on techniques?" Of course not. Duan Yu couldn't help but chuckle. These two pieces are ordinary crimson jade and purple jade. The kind of netherworld jade you speak of can only be discovered by chance. Not only can it be used to inherit secret techniques, but it can also be used to nourish the conscious. TSK, where can I get one? Qiao Mu once again exposed her lack of culture, so she didn't say anything else. Of course, she wouldn't ask them how to make a copy. She might as well keep the Tianji treasure blueprint open and let them work on their own. This Bao Bao is a great talisman master. When this Bao Bao draws talismans, none of you can understand it. Hence, the two youths each stood on one side of the picture. Chapter 452. Using a strand of mystic conscious as a guide, Mo Lien and Duan Yu recorded the contents of the Tianji treasure blueprint into the Crimson Jade and the Cub Jade without missing a single word. They didn't even miss a tiny mark. Then, they flipped through the blueprints and discovered that they were all complete. Only then did the three of them say a few more words and leave to rest. The next morning, when Arbor rolled over and opened her eyes, she sensed that there was someone in the room. She lifted her eyes and saw Murong Sun standing by the window. Murong Sun turned around when she saw her moving and smiled at her. "You're awake. Master." Arbor rubbed her eyes and rolled out of the blanket that was wrapped in a cocoon. "Master and your Ant Masters are about to set off now." Murong Sun walked to the bedside and naturally pulled the little girl to sit in front of the dressing mirror as usual. She took a comb and helped the little girl comb her messy long hair before skillfully coiling her hair into a knot. "Master hasn't taught you too many things or given you anything good in all these years. You're a hard-working child and rarely make Master worry. You can keep this." Murong Sun quickly put a jade bracelet on the little girl's left wrist. The jade bracelet was engraved with a jade-colored pine tree. It was flawlessly white and sparkled with a jade-like white light. Arbor was originally a bit sleepy, but she was completely startled awake now. She looked down at the jade bracelet on her wrist. How could she not recognize it? This was clearly the key to opening Maple Pavilion. "Master!" Arbor stood up and nearly bumped into Murong Sun's chin. "Are you saying your last words?" She wasn't stupid. Don't think she didn't hear Murong Sun's words as if she was saying her last words. Why would she give her the key to Maple Pavilion without rhyme or reason? Nonsense. Murong Sun heavily smacked Arbor's head. "What nonsense are you spouting? Your master is very strong, don't joke around. Who on Seekong planet has the ability to kill me? Then this?" Murong Sun brusquely glanced at her. "This is an early coming-of-age gift for you. That's all Master can do." "Nonsense, this is the symbol of the previous sect masters." Arbor was so nervous that his eyes were almost red. Moreover, she was not even 13 years old yet. There were still at least 2 years to go before her coming-of-age ceremony. Why was her master in such a hurry to give her a present in advance? Anyway, you don't have to worry about it. Just take it since I'm giving it to you. Why are you so talkative? I don't usually see you talkative, but you're really annoying today. Master, I'll go back to the sect with you, the little girl said immediately. You lass, you're so young yet so long-winded. Tell me, how many years have you not been home? Your mother and father might even think that our Holy Water sect is a man-eating sect that abducts children and doesn't even let them return home. Murong Sun poked her little head with a finger and couldn't resist laughing. I already said I'm fine. You just like to let your imagination run wild all day and worry too much. Alright, Master really has to set off. You should also quickly pack up and go home, ah. Master! The little fellow shouted loudly. Murong Sun looked down at her with a grin and couldn't resist teasing, What, aren't I just telling you to go home? You can't bear to part with Master? You're not lying to me. Of course, when have you ever seen Master lying to you? Murong Sun patted her little head with a smile and hugged her little body, gently patting her back. Master will never lie to you. Chapter 453. Murong Sun pulled Arbor back to her stool in disbelief. After combing her long hair, Murong Sun hugged her. Alright, Master has to leave. You're alone, so you have to take good care of yourself on the road and hurry home, okay? Arbor furrowed her brows and nodded hesitantly. That's a good girl. An obedient child is a good child. All right, master's leaving. Be good by yourself. Morong Sun nodded in satisfaction and forcefully pulled her gaze away from her. She turned around and left without even looking back. Soon, the Holy Water Sect's team set off. Arbor ran out and stood at the door in a daze, feeling that something was off. She saw the three peak masters leading everyone away. Yang Shirong and Lu Yun turned around and waved at her. Everyone's faces were brimming with smiles as they waved goodbye to her. Arbor felt very uncomfortable and stood at the door in a daze for a long time. It wasn't until Mo Lien called her softly that she returned to her senses and turned her head to look at him. What is it? Did something happen? Mo Lien grasped her hand and gently squeezed it. Arbor thought about it but still shook her head. Are you leaving now? He had left for so long, so it was time for him to return to the capital. How about I send you back to Shizhou City? Mo Lien asked with a smile. Hui Feng appeared next to the crown prince like a ghost and said icily and mechanically, Your Highness, the great king orders you to return within 3 days. 3 days? Can we fly? Even if we can fly, we can't fly to the capital. Mo Lien grumpily retorted. At this time, the great king was in the southern study, tossing a pile of tattered memorials onto the floor with a headache. Did you send an urgent message from 800 miles away? Did the crown prince reply to me? Did he say when he would return? Gong Chang and miserably kneeled on the floor and repeatedly shook his head. This old servant already sent 2 more memorials. This unfilial son. The great king was so angry that he wanted to smash the teacup. Only then did he realize that the teacup had already been smashed, and the eunuchs had just cleaned up the floor. Why did you leave so many things for me to deal with? Gong Chang and wept silently. Great king, you've been suppressing these matters for the past few days. You really can't blame His Highness the Crown Prince. In the past, didn't this unfilial son do things rather quickly? He finished reading 3 days' worth of memorials in half a day. Why are there so many of them today? Come and take a look. Why was this He Qizheng from the Ministry of Works complaining about being poor again? Every month, you have to reach out and ask for food from me. I'm about to eat chaff myself. Gong Chang'an. He really didn't want to bother with the furious king. Can't you ask him to step down? In the past, when the crown prince was handling state affairs, there was never such a big commotion. One moment the cup was smashed, the next moment the brush washer was also smashed. Gong Chang'an felt that it was really not easy to be in their line of work. Go over and ask if that unfilial son has sent a letter back. Did he say when he would return? The great king raised his brush and drew a cross on He Qizheng's memorial. Want your sister's food? Don't have it. Great king, you've already asked 5 times today. Save me. Hui Feng looked at his master with a different expression. He didn't say anything and merely watched silently. Master, if you take a detour to Shizhou City, then 3 days definitely won't be enough to return to the capital. You and Little Snow should return to the capital. Arbor reached out to stroke the snow leopard's large head, who was squeezed between the two of them. Little Snow is fast on her feet, so 3 days might not be enough. She should be able to return in 4 or 5 days. I'm not in a hurry, Mo Lien said softly. Chapter 454. Hui Feng moved his lips, but Mo Lien cast him a chilly glance, and he immediately shut his mouth. No need. Arbor had other plans in his mind, and he unfurled his brows slightly. He nodded at him and said, Go back as soon as possible. I'll go home by myself. At this time, Duan Yu and Situ Yi led the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Dao sect to bid her farewell. Wei Nanfeng waved his hand at her and said with a smile, Little miss, I don't know when we'll meet again after parting today. Big brother will solemnly apologize to you for our past matters. Let's bury the hatchet. You can't treat me as an enemy when we meet again. Shoo shoo shoo, where did this big brother come from? Duan Yu irritably glared at him. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Wei Nanfeng and nodded reluctantly. Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but be overjoyed, and he cast a smug look at Mo Lien. How is it? This brother has a sharp tongue, so I'm pretty good at dealing with people, right? Scram! Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him. Alright, you can all leave. I'm going home anyway. Let's bid farewell here, everyone. Arbor suppressed his thoughts, but he didn't show it on his face. When they were bidding farewell, Xixia Valley's Valley Master also walked over with his 2 personal disciples and said with a smile, "We just sent off the Holy Water Sect group, so you'll also be leaving. Let's bid farewell together." Everyone cupped their hands in salute and politely bade farewell to Xixia Valley's Valley Master. Xixia Valley's Valley Master looked at these youthful youths with a smile. These were the future experts of the sect, the cornerstones of the sect. Situ Yi smiled at Arbor and said with a nod, "Jojo, we'll meet again in the future. Take good care of yourself on the road. You can come visit our Heavenly Dao sect when you're free. Goodbye, senior brother Situ." Arbor nodded. Duan Yu turned around and gazed deeply at her, as if he wanted to imprint this glance into his eyes forever. The youth didn't say anything else and turned to leave with the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Dao sect. The small courtyard emptied out at once. Mo Lien and Arbor looked at each other and clasped their hands together. If you're not in a hurry after returning home, then don't return to the Holy Water sect for now. How about you come to Guanlan City to play? Mo Lien gazed at her with a grin. Guanlan City is really fun. When the time comes, I'll take you out for a stroll and eat good food. Arbor gave him a "I'm not a foodie" look and nodded slightly at him as a form of agreement. Mo Lien's face was full of joy. He raised his hand and patted her little head. "Then it's settled. I'll wait for you." "Yes." Arbor's eyes moved and he nodded. Mo Lien didn't know that his "I'll wait for you" had been waiting for a long time. He had waited so long that his heart was broken and cold to the bone. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let her go today. He raised his hand and hugged her. It was just a gentle hug, and then he let go. He didn't know that a long time had passed since he turned and left. If he had known, he wouldn't have let go even if he died. He wouldn't. Arbor looked at the empty small courtyard and abruptly started to leave. She felt that Master and Aunt Master must be hiding something from her. She felt that something must have happened to the sect. She decided to stealthily follow them back to take a look and follow her heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to settle down. The little fellow wanted to chase after them, but her figure suddenly swayed after 2 steps, and she clutched her chest with an unsightly expression. Chapter 455. Miss Chiao, what's wrong with you? Xixia Valley's Valley Master hastily rushed up and supported her nearly collapsing figure. Your cultivation realm is unstable. This is a sign that you're about to advance. You've been suppressing your cultivation realm to advance? No, your body can't take it anymore. You have to enter closed-door cultivation immediately. Just stay in our Xixia Valley. Don't worry, I'll send disciples to guard you. I'll bring you to a secluded place. No, You can't. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang also panicked. You're immature, child, but I can't allow you to continue like this. If you continue suppressing it, your mystic meridians will be affected in the future. If it gets serious, it will affect your lifeline. If your master knew, she would definitely be heartbroken. Child, why are you doing this? Valley Master, I have a very important matter. One Dan, help your little junior sister to my cultivation room and guard her well. Valley Master, Little junior sister, listen to my master. Even if I let you leave our Xixia Valley like this, you won't be able to hold on halfway. When Dan hastily sent the other 2 female disciples a look and half-carried Arbor away. Xixia Valley's Valley Master sighed heavily. Murong Sun, I can only help you to this extent. Mo Lien sat on the snow leopard's back. After exiting the valley, she asked Tui Feng, who was straddling the wind wolf, "Have Ao Yi and his team arrived yet?" "They're already outside the valley. They'll accompany Miss back to Shizhou City." Mo Lien was silent for a moment before saying, "I keep feeling like something's going on." Chow Chow's gaze didn't seem right. Moreover, Murong Sun's group left too hastily. Although they left with smiles and even greeted each other when they saw them, he kept feeling like Mo Lien considered it for a few seconds before pointing and saying, "You, go inform Mei Yi and have him investigate what exactly happened to Holy Water Sect these past 2 days." He frowned as he recalled that day in the arena. A female disciple named Yi Lingmin drank a few drops of water and quickly advanced. Apparently, the Holy Water Sect has a holy water spring. Have Mei Yi investigate this matter. Also, find some people to follow me to the Holy Water Sect to take a look. Yes. Hui Feng always felt that the Crown Prince was worrying too much about the Holy Water Sect. The 3 sects and 5 factions were all big sections. What could possibly happen to them? Hurry up and do it. The Crown Prince frowned and urged. This subordinate will inform them now. On the other side, not long after the Holy Water Sect's party left Shixia Valley with smiles on their faces, their charming faces darkened one by one. "Doya, stay here and keep watch. If you see your little junior sister come out, make her stay no matter what," Murong Sun said aloofly. She understood this disciple of hers all too well. She definitely wouldn't leave the matter at that. Shixia Valley's Valley Master might not necessarily be able to stop her. "Eldest martial uncle, I want to go back with you." Doya's eyes immediately reddened as she shook her head and said loudly. "Doya, your eldest martial uncle is right. You can't go back to Holy Water Sect with us." Lu Yun said seriously, "You forgot that you are the Alava tribe's clan leader. Your father, as well as your young brother and sister, are all looking forward to your early return." Murong Sun nodded and turned to look at Su Shanshan. "Shanshan, you take. Master, don't think of chasing me away. This disciple has been following Master since I was 5 and practicing martial arts in the Holy Water Sect. The Holy Water Sect is this disciple's home. This disciple has no other place to go," Su Shanshan said calmly. "We vow to live and die with the Holy Water Sect." All the disciples shouted in unison. "It's over. See you tomorrow." Chapter 456. Gurgle. The small ice bead jumped out of Arbor's waist pocket and hovered in the air, emitting a gentle light. "Master, the more unstable your emotions are, the more it will affect your advancement. Why don't you quickly restrain your emotions and enter closed-door cultivation? Quickly come out after you've advanced." Lady Holy Water's soft and adorable voice rang out. Arbor sat upright in the small room that Shixia Valley's Valley Master usually used for cultivation. Her forehead was drenched in a cold sweat. Just as Lady Holy Water had said, the current situation was indeed disadvantageous to her and the sect. She could only advance as quickly as possible and hurry back in order to shorten the time to the greatest extent. If she continued to struggle, it would only do her more harm than good. When she thought of this, Arbor took a deep breath and held her breath, blocking off her 5 senses. 10 intermediate-level blue calming talismans flew out from her fingertips. Intermediate-level talisman, blue calming talisman. For 8 hours, it would allow the person to rapidly concentrate and calm their mind, achieving the goal of doubling the mystic energy absorbed from the outside world. Lady Holy Water instantly entered Arbor's Dantian mystic domain. She circled around the remaining essence water and emitted a faint aura, accelerating this bit of essence water to fuse with Masta's mystic domain as quickly as possible. After 1 day and night, Arbor finally successfully entered the state of advancement. All the mystic energy within a radius of 300 meters in Shixia Valley was mobilized and swarmed towards her small cultivation room at a terrifying speed. Shixia Valley's Valley Master and his personal disciple, Wen Dan, stood outside the small room and looked up ruefully at the mystic energy that had already condensed into a large nebula. Peak Master Murong's last disciple is truly remarkable. Who knows how much she'll grow if she's given several years. Xixia Valley's Valley Master sighed. Master, are we really unable to help with the holy water sect's matter? Wen Dan couldn't bear to look at the tightly shut small room. Little junior sister is exceptionally intelligent. I feel that she already knows about this matter. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang heaved a long sigh. I had the 5 elders lead the 50 disciples over. It can only be said that I'm merely showing my sincerity. Master is also the person at the helm of Xixia Valley, so I must consider my own sect. I also can't let your martial uncles and senior brothers and sisters make some meaningless sacrifices. Disciple understands. Wen Dan nodded with a heavy heart. Master, are the people of the 6 prefectures really in existence that we can't surpass? No. Luo Jinyang shook his head and raised his hand. He said firmly, I believe that one day, someone will surpass them. You young children have outstanding talent and excellent qualifications. As long as you work hard enough and believe in the future, surpassing others is not a daydream. Master, this disciple will definitely work even harder. Wen Dan nodded heavily. It's just that junior sister will probably be alone and helpless in the future. It's too pitiful. Master, why don't we secretly leave her in Xixia Valley? This child. I don't think we can keep it. Luo Jinyang looked funny on the surface, but he knew better than anyone else. Xixia Valley simply couldn't keep Arbor. This little girl was bound to soar high in the future. The 6 prefectures making a move today might not necessarily be a good thing. The world was in turmoil, and danger lurked everywhere. What would happen in the future would depend on each person's fortune. 3 days later, Qiao Mu opened her apathetic eyes. After completely assimilating with her essence water, her cultivation had already broken through what people called the Great Mystic Cultivator threshold, level 10. Moreover, she was steadily climbing to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator entry level. Chapter 457. Arbor's cold gaze revealed a trace of intense killing intent as the vortexes in the depths of her eyes spun like star fragments. She used her inner vision and saw that the second branch meridian in her body had already formed, but she was in no mood to pay attention to it right now. The Spirit Division Record's Soul Chapter had already officially entered the 3rd layer, tempering the progress of her 2nd and 3rd branch meridians. At this time, her 1st branch meridian had already expanded to the same width as her main meridian, about a finger's width. She could completely condense all the mystic energy in her branch meridian into mystic conscious, open a complete inner world, or use her mystic eyes. It would no longer affect the consumption of mystic energy in her main meridian during battle. In other words, if an ordinary level 11 mystic cultivator could condense 50% of their mystic energy into mystic conscious during battle, it would already be considered a high-level condensation of mystic conscious. Then her mystic conscious definitely wouldn't exceed the 6th level of the mystic realm. Our dear Qiao Mu, however, could condense all the mystic energy in her 1st branch meridian into mystic conscious. At the same time that her cultivation entered the great level 11 mystic cultivator realm, her mystic conscious also reached the 11th level of the mystic realm. Thus, those great level 11 mystic cultivators in the same batch as her basically couldn't compare to her in battle. Entering the cultivation of a great level 11 mystic cultivator meant that Arbor could finally contract mystic beasts. But right now, she wasn't in the mood to go to the mystic beast forest to find any powerful mystic beasts. Just as she was about to get up, she saw a snow-white ball tear open the void and rush out. Startled, Arbor didn't have time to ponder why the little white squirrel could rush out of Paradise Planet on its own when she suddenly felt a slight pain in her finger. Looking down, she saw a drop of blood seeping out and merging with the snow-white ball's drop of blood. Suddenly, it emitted a dazzling and strange light. A circle of totem contract characters appeared above the human and beast's heads, flickering back and forth. Light and shadow flickered back and forth. The contract characters formed a circle of constantly swimming tadpole-like characters and gradually shrank to the size of a ring before abruptly landing beside the defensive ring. At this time, in addition to the defensive ring on Arbor's middle finger, there was an additional pitch-black, lusterless contract ring engraved with transparent embossed inscriptions on her index finger. This was beyond her expectations. Arbor simply didn't expect that the little white squirrel would suddenly rush out of Paradise Planet and successfully form a contract with her after she successfully advanced to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. She actually didn't like cute beasts. She liked wild beasts like the snow leopard or the 7-star white tiger. This way, she could feel a little more secure. She liked strong and healthy companions like this. They could accompany her as she grew up and walked through a prosperous life. But now every mystic cultivator could only contract with one mystic beast in their lifetime. This was a clear rule. Therefore Arbor wasn't as angry as she imagined. In fact, she should be angry. This little beast didn't ask for her opinion at all and contracted with her on its own. However, Arbor had always been more lenient towards partners who had been together for a long time. If she wanted to form a contract, then so be it. At most, she would use the summoning talisman to summon 2 more beasts in the future. The premise was that the summoning talisman wasn't a scam. "Master, are you angry?" A small and timid voice emerged from the depths of her mind. This was the convenience of forming a contract with a beast. Even if you formed a contract with a low-level little mystic beast, as long as the contract was successful, the master and beast would be able to communicate mentally without any hindrance. Chapter 458. Shouldn't I be angry? Arbor's voice was cold as she replied. The small voice was almost about to cry, "I am sorry, Master, I want to accompany Master forever. I will work hard to recover, Master. I will become very tired." Finally, the timid voice became weaker and weaker, as if it didn't have much confidence in itself. Arbor waved her hand at the little white squirrel curled up by her feet. The little guy's bean-like eyes suddenly lit up, and with a whoosh, it jumped into her arms. Little Furry's face was filled with happiness as it rolled around in her arms. "Actually, I'm not that strong either." Arbor stroked the little white squirrel's fur in a rare moment of attentiveness, her voice indifferent as she said, "If I were strong enough, perhaps she wouldn't have fallen into today's passive situation." She stood up, and her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her mystic sense naturally condensed in front of her eyes, turning into 2 invisible palms that pushed open the door to her inner world. She saw that her inner world, which was about 15 cubic meters in size, had expanded by more than 10 times. The originally 3-story golden mountain of jewels had now revealed its original appearance. It turned out that it had only revealed the tip of the iceberg at the beginning. Now, this golden mountain of jewels was so tall that one couldn't see the end of it. Her tiny mystic sense avatar stood at the foot of the mountain, as insignificant as a speck of dust. Her food box. Arbor's mystic sense moved, and that delicately carved red sandalwood food box suddenly flew out from under the mountain of jewels, swiftly appearing in her palm. Phew! Arbor let out a small sigh of relief. The mystic sense condensed in her branch meridians could finally allow her to retrieve things from her inner world without any hindrance. Her 2 small hands used a bit of force to open the lid of the food box. There were still 10 white, chubby, and cute meat buns, steaming with steam, neatly arranged in the food box. There was a line of lollipops in the gaps. Yes, when she saw this little thing, the word lollipop had inexplicably appeared in her mind. It was as if someone had once held this little thing and waved at her with a smile, coaxing her to eat it. Arbor hugged the lunchbox and sat down. For some reason, he felt a little sad. It was only when her profound sense entered the food box that she clearly realized how big the space inside was. No matter how many meat buns you took out, there seemed to be an endless supply of them. What was even more frightening was that there weren't just buns inside. She used her mystic sense to casually flip through the contents and took out several plates of soup and vegetables with different flavors. It looked like a very powerful lunchbox. It seemed that all the food in the restaurants around the world had been swept clean by it. She felt that as long as she hugged this lunchbox, even if she had never gotten anything in her life, she would not die of hunger or thirst. Master! Little Chio's timid voice brought her back from her silence and daze. Arbor subconsciously reached out to touch his cold little face. He took out a spoon, drank a few mouthfuls of soup, and ate a few spoonfuls of rice. His eyes were a little red. Chirp chirp. Arbor hugged the little thing and muttered to herself, I seem to have forgotten something very, very important. I can't remember it no matter how hard I try. Master, don't worry. Slowly, you'll remember. The little white squirrel rubbed against her chest. I hope so. Arbor put down the spoon. Chapter 459. Arbor set down the soup ladle and put away the food she had eaten into her inner world. Only then did she close the lid of the food box. She hugged the food box for a short while before moving it back into her inner world. Her current inner world was about 180 cubic meters. An ordinary mystic cultivator's inner world was only about 3 to 5 cubic meters. They needed to continuously train and increase their mystic conscious before they could expand their inner world. It was considered pretty good if they could expand their inner world to more than 10 cubic meters on their own. Thus, Arbor stared at her inner world in a daze for a long time. At that time, Fan Chioha's cultivation was much higher than hers. Fan Chioha was already a level 12 great mystic cultivator, but strangely, her inner world was bigger than his. It was more than half the size, exceeding 20 cubic meters. At that time, this kind of inner world could already be considered a wondrous inner world. But compared to her current inner world, it really paled in comparison. Arbor could only chuckle. Her mystic conscious crossed the jewels and gold mountain that reached the top of the barrier and saw the pair of stone statues that she had been longing to see again. No, it wasn't a pair. Arbor was dumbstruck. She stared at them for a long time. There were actually many similar stone statues. They were arranged in 8 horizontal rows. She was momentarily dazzled when she looked at them and actually couldn't see the end. Our dear Xiao Mu was stunned for a while. She shifted her mystic conscious all the way over and carefully counted. She discovered that there were as many as 800 pairs of stone statues that were as tall as a 3-story building. At the back of the stone statues, there was a lone statue that looked completely different from the other stone statues. Its body was spiraling sideways, and its head was in the posture of howling at the sky. There seemed to be 2 bulging bumps on its head. A figure spiraling upward like this? Arbor's eyes abruptly contracted. She tried to use her mystic conscious to shift this statue out, but a piercing pain suddenly assaulted her mind. She quickly pulled her mystic conscious out of her inner world and threw her apparition into her conscious to continue cultivating before closing the door to her inner world. Only then did she let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed that with his mystic sense, there was no problem for him to casually take out things like food boxes and jewelry, but to move such a large sculpture, he was afraid that it was still not enough. The larger the object, the heavier it was. If he wanted to take it out of his inner world, he would have to use up an enormous amount of mystic consciousness. He still hadn't reached the required level yet. It was just that. That coiled body, twisting and turning, looked very awkward. Could it be a big snake? At the thought that there might be a snake condor in her inner world, Xiao Mu felt uncomfortable all over. She felt uncomfortable everywhere. Arbor shivered inwardly, and his heart was suddenly filled with anger. Why did she fear such a dark and twisted thing from the bottom of her heart? No! One day, he had to make a trip to the Mystic Beast Forest. When the time came, he had to overcome this fear. Otherwise, once his enemies learned of this weakness, he would probably suffer in secret in the future. After making up his mind, Arbor tidied himself up and walked out of the cultivation room with the little white squirrel in his arms. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang, who had heard the news, quickly walked toward her with his personal disciple, Wen Dan. Little junior sister, congratulations on successfully advancing. Wen Dan's gaze flickered as he sized her up. What are you doing? Luo Jinyang's gaze revealed admiration. Your little junior sister's current cultivation is one level higher than yours. You naturally can't see through her cultivation. Chapter 460. Level 11. When Dan was shocked. Little junior sister, you leaped to become a level 11 great mystic cultivator? The advancement speed of Holy Water Sect's disciples was indeed shockingly frightening. Little junior sister was only a level 8 mystic cultivator before, so this large leap simply stunned everyone. She wasn't even 13 years old this year, but she already became a level 11 great mystic cultivator that many people yearned for even in their dreams. This was simply no harm without comparison. Once they did, they would feel that other people's talent was filled with eerie malice toward them. Arbor expressionlessly nodded and said to Shishia Valley's Valley Master, "Good Valley Master, Senior Sister Wen, I'll be leaving now. Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. Farewell." Little junior sister, where are you going? Wen Dan asked with fear and trepidation. Senior Sister Wen, why ask when you already know the answer? Arbor aloofly said, I've already been delayed in Shishia Valley for 4 to 5 days, so I hope you two won't obstruct me again. You're wasting what little time I have left. Little junior sister, why bother? When Dan looked at her with knitted brows and said, even if you go back, it won't make any difference. Miss Xiao Qiao, in truth, I've already sent some people to your holy water sect 4 days ago. But did you know? Those people I sent out, I expected them to not come back. On the day I left, I told them that this rescue mission would undoubtedly fail. Arbor's small fists had already unconsciously clenched tightly. Good Valley Master, be more careful in the future and don't be a goody two-shoes anymore. After I leave, take your disciples and find another place to live in seclusion for a period of time. Little junior sister. When Dan was anxious. Our Shishia Valley isn't afraid of trouble. We're not afraid of being implicated by you. The disciples of Shishia Valley who came after hearing the commotion all looked up at the plain-clothed little girl standing on Qinghuan. They felt that the little girl's plain-clothed appearance was as cold as ice. Shishia Valley's Valley Master said, Miss Qiao, please reconsider. Your master, Murong Sun, Shishia Valley's Valley Master hadn't even finished speaking when he saw the large azure bird circle once in the air before flapping its wings and flying towards the sky. Arbor stood steadily on Blue Luan's back, his belt fluttering as he reached out and cupped his fists slightly towards everyone expressionlessly. Good person Valley Master, fellow brothers and sisters of Shishia Valley, I, Arbor, will remember today's grace in my heart. When we meet again in the future, I will definitely repay this kindness. Goodbye. Screech. Qingluan let out a long cry. Finally, it was no longer suppressed by its little master. It spread out its wings that were tens of meters long and rushed into the distant sky with a whoosh. Luo Jinyang raised his head and sent her off with his gaze, his eyes revealing a trace of appreciation. Although Miss Qiao is young, she is extremely intelligent. I hope she'll be fine. Master. Wen Dan. Pass down the order for the entire valley to make preparations. We will leave Shishia Valley today and head to the clan's secret grounds to stay for a while. Yes. Qingluan pierced through layers of clouds and flew out of Shishia Valley at an extremely fast speed. Ao Yi and his group, who were guarding outside Shishia Valley, had waited for a long time until today. They almost thought that Miss Qiao wanted to stay in Shishia Valley for a while longer. Suddenly, they saw a large bird rushing out of Shishia Valley. Ao Yi was startled and abruptly jumped out from his hiding spot. It's Miss. What direction is that? Captain, that doesn't seem to be the direction of Shizhou City. Chapter 461. Ao Yi jumped up. That's in the direction of the Holy Water Sect. Why is Miss going to the Holy Water Sect? Didn't His Highness say that she wanted to go home? Don't worry about that. Quickly follow her. Ao Yi was so anxious that he stomped his feet. He hastily commanded everyone to board the flying mystic beasts and chase after her. However, Qingluan was extremely fast and was already 50 kilometers away in the blink of an eye. Even if they chased after her, they would be half a beat slower. Ao Yi was so anxious that he was fuming. He slapped his teammate who was riding the flying mystic beast. "Make it fly faster. It's already the fastest, Captain." Arbor activated her defensive mystic weapon with a wave of her hand and shielded herself from the fierce winds in the sky. She didn't know that Ao Yi and the rest had chased after her day and night. She only sat quietly inside the defensive barrier and took out a large handful of ebony to draw talismans piece by piece. Her expression was as calm as water, and no one could see any change in her expression. However, her eyes were focused on silently carving talismans. One talisman after another, except for a few moments when she slept on Qingluan's back and opened her eyes, she began to silently draw talismans again. She drew talismans one after another until her eyes turned red, but she was still oblivious. 300 ebony blue binding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level binding talisman matrices. These intermediate-level binding talisman matrices made from ebony could bind around 10 people at once, provided that their cultivation was equal to or lower than hers. 300 ebony blue mystic guiding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level mystic guiding talisman matrices. Within an hour, she would continuously absorb the mystic energy in the world into her body to replenish her rapidly depleting mystic energy. After crossing the Great Swamp, Arbor was basically in a state where she could kill anything in her way. Whoever dared to stop her from returning to the sect would die without a doubt. Thus, when Ao Yi and the rest rushed to the Great Swamp, they were simply stunned by the mess of corpses in the swamp. All the zombie crocodiles were beyond recognition. Most of them had their heads chopped off, and many of them were frozen into ice sculptures erected at the edge of the swamp. Later on, they didn't see any more zombie crocodiles causing trouble. They were probably afraid of this short-tempered little girl and quietly dispersed. In less than 6 days, Xiaomu directly exited the Great Swamp and arrived at that adventurer base from back then. Qingluan really needed to rest. It had been flying day and night without sleep for so many days and nights. Arbor felt sorry for it. When they entered the adventurer's base, Arbor put it away and let it sleep on her shoulder. She went straight to the market to find someone to buy a horse. No matter what, the earlier the better. She prepared a horse and rode towards Wuyu City. She would wait for Qingluan to wake up before flying. Calculating the time, she estimated that she would be able to rush back in 7 days. This was already the fastest speed she could achieve on this trip. It was all because of the existence of Qingluan. Otherwise, it would be impossible. "I'm buying a horse." A cold voice rang out in the bustling market. Everyone turned to look, and when they saw the little girl's snow-white and frosty appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. There was a lot of turnover in the adventurer's base. The little girl hadn't come for so many days, and the people doing business in the market had already changed. "Yo, little girl, where are you going to buy a horse?" A second-rate voice rang out from behind, causing a series of men to laugh maliciously. Arbor's gaze turned cold. Chapter 462. Back then, when she followed Emo Lien to the bazaar, it was obvious that the crown prince wasn't easy to deal with. From start to finish, no one dared to cause trouble for them. So, it was because she looked easy to provoke? TSK, what a beautiful little lady. Coming to our adventurer base alone, are you looking for a husband? Ha 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 ha. Laughter rang out around them. Someone even joked, "How many husbands does this little lady want?" Soon after, a wretched howl was heard. Everyone's laughter seemed to be stuck in their throats as they stared dumbfoundedly. The loafer who was the first to tease her was actually kicked away by the little girl. His whole body flipped in the air and smashed into someone else's horse trough. His head was bruised and bleeding, and he was groaning in pain. The horse neighed in fright. Without another word, Arbor tossed out a handful of Duan Yu's shooting star powder. That loafer screamed several times, but before he could get up, he fell back down heavily and died miserably on the ground. 18 small nails had appeared on his face, body, and limbs. One of them hit between his brows, seeking his soul. Kill in one step. This time, all the teasing passers-by all sucked in a cold breath and took a step back. This little lady's attack was truly ruthless, taking a life in an instant. As expected, those who dared to come to the adventurer base alone weren't easy to deal with. The men who had just teased that loafer and asked Arbor how many husbands she wanted quickly shrunk their necks and left dejectedly. Boss Ma was also trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl in front of him, whose face was covered with frost and whose body was emitting a chill that came from the depths of her bones. Arbor tossed him a mid-grade magnetite. Pick out the best horse for me. It's going to be a long journey. Yes, yes, yes. How could this little great ant be trifled with? Boss Ma naturally didn't dare to cheat her, so he quickly picked out the sturdiest horse and handed it to Arbor. Arbor mounted the horse. She had barely taken 2 steps with a flick of her wrist when 5 to 6 local ruffians holding clubs noisily came over from the road ahead. Who is it? Which little bitch killed my brother? Come out immediately. Boss Ma quickly hid behind the stable and peeked, shaking his head and sighing in his heart. These local tyrants had been in the adventurer's base for a long time. They had formed a small gang and often extorted ordinary merchants. However, today, they had probably kicked an iron plate. The little grand ant's eyes flashed with anger. Suddenly, a jet-black feral appeared in front of her eyes and leaped forward. Those who block the way will die. Xiao Mu swatted her feral down, immediately smacking the head of the local thug into his neck. When the remaining 4 or 5 little ruffians saw this, they were so scared that they peed in their pants. Their legs trembled, and they knelt down on the ground with soft knees. Great Ant, please spare us, Great Ant, please spare us. Arbor straddled his horse and held a feral in his hand. His body was full of killing intent as his eyes swept across both sides of the road. This time, no one dared to come out and throw their lives away. They all trembled and scrambled to the corners. When a spacious road appeared in the middle, the vendors on both sides were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly moved their stalls to the corners, afraid that they would block this little great ant's path. Arbor pulled the horse's reins and scolded. When she pulled back, the horse galloped forward and disappeared in front of everyone in a flash. Chapter 463. After about 7 to 8 minutes, everyone finally calmed down from their fright. They looked at each other and saw the deep terror on each other's faces. This truly was a little fiend who wanted to take their lives. They blamed themselves for not bringing their eyes with them on the road. These days, not just anyone could be provoked. She might look like a soft little girl, but in reality, she was even more frightening than a demon god. After Arbor rushed out of the adventurer base, she galloped toward 5 Moon City. She galloped all the way until the second night, when the horse was about to foam at the mouth, before she finally stopped and switched to Qinghuan to fly in the sky again. However, it was already a bit late. At this moment, the Holy Water sect welcomed a subversive, all-around crisis. Lu Yizhi and Qiu San brought a total of more than 700 people from Shantian Prefecture's forces on Sikong Planet. They arrived at the Holy Water sect's mountain gate a day ago and encountered Ani Prefecture's assistant manager, Hong Jinchuan, who rushed over after hearing the news. At that time, Lu Yizhi's expression was very unsightly, but after careful consideration, he reached an agreement with Hong Jinchuan. The two sides planned to first take down the Holy Water sect and find the sacred water. Then, they would see who the sacred water favored and pass peacefully. Of course, whether the other side would be unconvinced and start fighting at that time was another matter. At least for now, Shantian Prefecture's Lu Yizhi and Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan could be considered to have reached a preliminary agreement. In merely one night, these people slaughtered many Holy Water sect disciples like wolves and tigers. When Murong Sun's group hurried back, everyone had already retreated to the sect master's peak. At the beginning, many disciples were unprepared when the people from the 2 prefectures rushed in. So when the Holy Water sect's sect master rushed out, the disciples guarding the mountain gate were all dead. The sect master blocked Lu Yizhi and Hong Jinchuan's attacks by herself. Although she barely managed to protect the remaining disciples and led them to the sect master's peak, the sect master was clearly on the verge of death by the time the three peak masters rushed over. "Ah Sun, I really have to trouble you to take on this heavy burden this time." The Holy Water Sect's sect master trembled as she took out a token and handed it to Morong Sun, who was standing at the head of her bed. "Master. From now on, Morong Sun is my Holy Water Sect's 17th sect master." "Master." Yang Shirong and Lu Yun both knelt down, their eyes filled with tears as they looked at the dying sect master. Su Shanshan and the other disciples knelt at the door with their heads bowed. Drops of tears fell from their eyes onto the bamboo floor. "Ah Sun, Arong, Ah Yun. Master, disciples are here." The three of them choked out, almost unable to speak. "Master's greatest achievement in this life is taking you three as my disciples." The Holy Water Sect's sect master half reclined on the cushion and held her three disciples' hands. She said with a smile, "Although I call you wicked disciples all day long, I've never seen you before. But I know very well that the three of you are the most filial. Master, you should rest. You will get better." Yang Shirong sobbed. "I won't be able to recover. I know my own situation." It was already a miracle that she was able to survive until now after fighting against so many experts from the two prefectures. Right now, only the people from the two prefectures had come, and they could still hold on for a while. If everyone from the 6 prefectures were here. "Right now, Master will tell you a secret." The sect master coughed heavily several times and tightly gripped Morong Sun's hands, covering the heated sect master token. Chapter 464. In the ancestral hall behind the sect master's peak, there is a mechanism behind the Buddha statue. "Ah Sun, take this token and you can activate an emergency space talisman matrix. It can directly transport you all to a place in Poland Manor. Poland Manor is the most aloof place among the 6 manors. Most of them are women, cough cough cough. You shouldn't be detected if you sneak into a remote place. Of course, this space talisman matrix hasn't been used in several hundred years. Master also doesn't know if there will be any problems during the transport process. Also, this talisman matrix can only transport 200 people. We still have 500 or so disciples left. So Ah Sun, Master will not take responsibility for this difficult decision of who stays and who goes and will entrust it to you." After saying this, the Holy Water Sect's sect master clutched her chest and coughed violently. Suddenly, she straightened up and spat out a mouthful of blood. The 3 disciples' eyes glistened with tears, and their hearts were grief-stricken. They all reached out to gently press her chest. "Master! Sect Master!" The master and disciples tightly clasped their hands together. The Holy Water Sect's sect master heaved a long sigh of relief and slowly collapsed into her pillow. A faint smile hung on her lips, as if she had fallen asleep, and she passed away just like that. "Sect Master!" The disciples outside the door wailed and wailed mournfully. Morong Sun tightly gripped the sect master token in her hand and suddenly raised it with one hand. She turned around and sternly said, "Yang Shirong, this sect master decrees you as the 18th sect master of the Holy Water Sect effective immediately." Yang Shirong knelt on the ground and looked up, dazedly gazing at her senior sister. She cried with tears in her eyes, "Eldest senior sister. Ah Rong, immediately take 200 disciples to the ancestral hall Master spoke of and leave the Holy Water Sect immediately." "No! Senior sister. You have to leave with us." Yang Shirong jumped up from the ground and shouted loudly. "This matter was caused by my lax disciplining of my disciples. I have no face to face everyone in the Holy Water Sect. Everyone can leave. I can't leave." Morong Sun shook her head and sternly stared at Yang Shirong. "If you still treat me as your eldest senior sister, leave immediately." "Eldest senior sister. I don't want eldest senior sister, eldest senior sister." Yang Shirong's voice was hoarse from crying. "Shanshan, Shueshao, follow your second martial uncle." "Master, we won't leave." The two of them refused in unison. You! Morong Sun was both anxious and angry. At this moment, a disciple hurriedly rushed in and shouted, eldest martial uncle, the people from the two manors are rushing up the sect master's peak. Our own, leave immediately. Morong Sun yanked Yang Shirong up from the ground and gave her a heavy shove. Second senior sister, hurry up and leave. Lu Yun also called out anxiously as she pushed the third peak's disciple, Chen Hanzi, to Yang Shirong's side. At this moment of life and death, many disciples shouted, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving. I vow to live and die with the Holy Water sect. Third sister, you're not leaving either. Yang Shirong's eyes widened in shock. She wanted to pull Lu Yun's arm, but Lu Yun gently shook off her hand. Second senior sister. Please take care of yourself. The heavy burden of the Holy Water sect will be entrusted to you. Lu Yun cupped her fists and smiled lightly at her. Hurry and leave. The anxious Morong Sun kicked Yang Shirong and dragged her and the 200 disciples she casually picked out, pushing them out the back door. Are Holy Water sect disciples afraid of death? Morong Sun asked coldly. No. You won't lose out if you kill one, but you'll make a profit if you kill two. Kill. Chapter 465. Master, do we have to go? Second peak's disciple, Yu Gui, cried as she repeatedly looked back at the path they came from. The originally quiet and tranquil bamboo forest was now filled with the sounds of battle. The 200 disciples felt like their hearts were being burned by a raging inferno, and their eyes were brimming with tears and hatred. Go! Yang Shirong hardened her heart and flung her head, leading the 200 disciples toward the ancestral hall. It was only at the last moment that they realized there was such a special passage in the sect. Otherwise, they would have brought the child along. Now, the child was all alone. Just thinking about it made one's heart ache. Second Aunt Master. Chen Hanzi bit her lower lip and sobbed uncontrollably. Don't cry. Yang Shirong held back her tears and roared, don't disappoint the sect master and the two peak masters' intentions. We must survive with determination. There is only hope if we survive. As long as the Holy Water sect has us. The Holy Water sect will not be destroyed. Yes. The Holy Water sect will not be destroyed. No matter how difficult the path forward was. They would not shrink back. Even if it was covered in thorns and hidden thorns and filled with deep ravines. Even if they had to crawl all the way until they were covered in poisonous thorns, they would do their best to crawl down. Because each of them carried the lives of 800 Holy Water sect disciples on their backs. 800 disciples as one heart and one life. The Holy Water sect would not be destroyed. It would never be. When the sect master token activated the talisman matrix and a burst of moonlight enveloped the 200 disciples, strings of mysterious, transparent runes flowed around their bodies like twinkling stars. Everyone cupped their fists toward the bamboo forest and silently said with tears in their eyes, Senior and junior sisters, we will meet again someday. The ancestral hall trembled slightly before regaining its tranquility in an instant. Lu Yizhi coughed and panted heavily as he slaughtered the Holy Water sect disciples along the way. When he rushed up the sect master peak, he was blocked by a water pillar. He couldn't help but smile with narrowed eyes. The lower star domain is truly a mystical place. There's actually someone who can control the water spirit in the tiny Holy Water sect? Could it be that the sacred water is on you? Morong Sun sneered at him. You can come and try. You'll know whether it's on me or not. The two of them were like two shooting stars that streaked across the horizon. Suddenly, they made their moves against each other. Whooshing, whooshing, as the profound energy was activated, bursts of exploding cyclones spread out around the two of them. At the same time, Hong Jinchuan was leading many disciples from the two prefectures to kill Holy Water sect disciples and interrogate them about the Holy Water's whereabouts. I don't know. A Holy Water sect disciple collapsed on the ground and glared angrily at Hong Jinchuan. She laughed harshly. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you bastards. Go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly self-detonated. Lu Yun, who was in the middle of exchanging blows with an elder from the two manors, couldn't help but sway. She looked back and bit her lip. The Holy Water Sect disciples' consecutive self-detonations were all blocked by the defensive mystic weapons in the hands of the two prefectures. However, at this moment, their expressions were rather ugly. This bunch of ants actually dared to resist. Until now, not a single person had revealed the whereabouts of the holy water. This really made them lose face. Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple, Gong Yang, fiercely picked up a fat woman and slapped her. Speak. Where is the holy water? As long as you're willing to say it, I'll give you a chance to live. Sister Fat pounced and heavily knocked her head against Gong Yang's head, immediately leaving a large red mark on his forehead. She spat a mouthful of spittle on Gong Yang's face and laughed loudly. Little bastard. Go to hell. These 2 days, I've entered an important turning point in this book. After the turn, my chow will be big. Don't be anxious, let me write slowly and write more brilliantly. It's best if you don't influence my train of thought. Today's 10 chapters will end. Tomorrow will still be 10 chapters, and the day after tomorrow, it will resume to 6 chapters. Next week, the author will be very busy. There are also some readers who are worried that the author will abuse 100 chapters to purposely separate my Qiao and the Crown Prince. That won't happen. The author will never abuse for the sake of abuse, so don't worry. Finally, please repeat after me 3 times, the author is my Qiao's biological mother. Chapter 466. Boom! Although Gong Yang activated his defensive artifact, he was still flung out by the force of the self-explosion. He tumbled heavily on the ground, his head bleeding from the impact. Fat sis. The girls of the first peak cried out in grief. The fat sis who took care of everyone's daily needs for 30 years, cooking soup and cooking for them every day, and beaming with smiles every day, no longer existed. Damn it! Fury rose from Gong Yang's heart, and he staggered up from the ground. When he saw the disdainful gazes of the other senior and junior brothers of Ani Prefecture, fury rose from his heart. Lu Yizhi and Murong Sun's palms collided, and the two of them swiftly separated. Surprise flashed through Lu Yizhi's eyes. The highest cultivation in the lower star domain is a level 15 mystic cultivator. But I actually can't see through your cultivation. But it doesn't matter. I'll find a few more people to spar with you. Even if you can surpass level 15 and reach the spiritual realm, you must be suppressed right now, ha ha ha, cough, cough, cough. I heard your sect master died, so the entire sect is grieving and indignant right now. Ha ha ha, I'll go have a chat with your damn sect master. I'll see if you disciples and grand disciples are willing to let your old sect master's body be riddled with holes and become neither human nor ghost, ha ha ha. You dare! Fury burst out of Murong Sun's eyes, and a water vortex swiftly shot over. However, before it could wrap around Lu Yizhi, that old geezer, she was entangled by 5 or 6 Shuntian Prefecture elders. In Shuntian Prefecture, these level 15 elders were, at most, just outer sect stewards. But in the star field, each and every one of them was respectfully addressed as elders. No matter how high Murong Sun's cultivation was, she was still tightly entangled by several Shuntian Prefecture elders. She could only glare at Lu Yizhi with bloodshot eyes as he charged into the sect master's room. Master! Lu Yun crazily attacked the 2 elders from the 2 prefectures from the other side, forcing them to retreat step by step. She flew over and dashed toward the sect master's room. The 2 elders' guts rose as they simultaneously unleashed 2 bursts of vigorous level 15 profound energy, attacking towards Lu Yun's back. Lu Yun staggered forward a few steps and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she still dashed toward the sect master's room. Junior sister. At the same time that Murong Sun formed a water defense in her hand, she abruptly flipped her hand and threw down a water judgment. Snow water that blotted out the sky and covered the earth tumbled down the snowy peak, crashing toward the 5 to 6 Shantian Prefecture elders with a boom. While the many elders of Shantian Prefecture were alarmed, evil thoughts overtook their minds, and they all worked together to channel a terrifying mystic energy vortex that directly bombarded Murong Sun. Murong Sun swallowed a mouthful of blood, and her eyes were crimson red. With a wave of her hand, her head of fine black hair fluttered along with her robes. In everyone's eyes, the first Peak's Peak Master's crimson robes shone brightly under the night sky. In the blink of an eye, the entire snowy peak shook, and all the snow water flowing underground was drawn out, surging towards the disciples of the two prefectures. At the same time, Luigi had already flashed into the sect master's room. He raised his large palm and was about to strangle the sect master's neck. At this time, the sect master's bed suddenly flipped over, and a person jumped out from under the bed, ruthlessly punching through the chest of Luigi, a level 15 great mystic cultivator. Pfft! Luigi spat out a mouthful of blood and hastily grabbed a large handful of pills to consume. As he swallowed the pills in large mouthfuls, he viciously glared in the direction of the bed and was stunned. Chapter 467. Although the Holy Water Sect's sect master was ghastly pale, she still stood there perfectly fine. How was she already dead? A woman in her 50s stood beside her, supporting the sect master's arm. The two of them didn't say a word and pounced towards him. The profound energy from each of their fists intertwined and swept towards his face with a boom. Luigi was shocked. He had already experienced the sect master's strength. She was an out-and-out level 15 great mystic cultivator. As for the old woman beside the sect master, her strength was also not ordinary. Xiao Hong, take the children and leave. The sect master abruptly pounced over and grabbed Luigi's body tightly. Everyone saw the door to the sect master's room being smashed open. Their sect master, who had already breathed her last, actually rushed out with Luigi in her arms and flew toward the snowy peak. Ah Sun! Let's go! Before everyone could react, the sect master left behind her last words and rushed toward the snowy peak with Luigi in tow. At the same time, there was a huge explosion. Aunt Yi's eyes instantly moistened. Following this explosion, half of the sect master's peak split open, and a soul-stirring avalanche began with a bang. At the same time, Duan Yu, who was rushing back to Daybreak Sect, and Situ Yi, who was at Heavenly Dao Sect, received news of the Holy Water Sect being attacked at the same time. Daybreak Sect's sect master, Liang Wanshan, made a prompt decision. The three sects are united. We can't just watch the 6 prefectures besiege the Holy Water Sect. Master, I'll go with you, Duan Yu immediately said. Everyone turned back and headed toward the Holy Water Sect. At the adventurer base, they ran into Heavenly Dao Sect Sitamin and company and hurried toward the snowy peak. On the other side, in 5 Moon City, City Lord Wu Mantian and his wife stood by the window, deeply worried. They looked up at the pitch-black sky, not knowing what to do. Everyone in 5 Moon City knew about the huge commotion caused by the Holy Water Sect tonight. No one knew what happened at the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate, so the common people naturally didn't dare to poke their noses into other people's business. Until the next day. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the Holy Water Sect's mountain peaks that had been practically flattened. In particular, the sect master's peak seemed to have been directly shaved off by half of its peak. The entire peak was shorter by more than half, and the soaring flames burned for an entire night. No one dared to go there and see what had happened. The 5 Moon City's city lord only dared to send 2 10th level experts over to take a look. However, very quickly, the news they brought back was that no one from the Holy Water Sect was left alive. Everything seemed to be settled. The world-shaking battle 3 days ago seemed to have been buried by the snow that never melted all year round. These past few days, the citizens of 5 Moon City had been whispering in private, saying that the Holy Water Sect might have offended an expert from the middle 6 prefectures, which led to the tragic extermination of their sect. Who did you say was exterminated? A fair and clean little hand suddenly grabbed the noisy woman's collar and lifted her up with one hand. The woman was so scared that her legs kicked wildly and she begged for mercy again and again. Spare me, miss, spare me. After rushing for 3 days and 4 nights, they finally arrived at Arbor in 5 Moon City. They couldn't accept the news at all. Impossible. She shook her head. Master wouldn't lie to her. Arbor shook its head vigorously, then shook its head again. Suddenly, he left the noisy woman behind and sprinted towards the city gate. Everyone saw that the plain figure was as fast as a wisp of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had passed over 100 people. They couldn't help but stare at him in amazement. Chapter 468. Arbor dashed out of the city and quickly arrived at the foot of Snowy Peak. As soon as she reached Xianghe village, her heart trembled from the deathly stillness. Deathly stillness, it really was deathly stillness. Usually, this small village at the foot of Snowy Peak would be very lively at this time. Children's laughter mixed with women's chatter, and men came down from the mountain after a day of hard work. Smoke rose in spirals from kitchen chimneys, cheerful laughter. But now, all of this was gone. Deathly stillness, it really was a deathly stillness. Arbor dashed into the village entrance and stood there in a daze. What appeared before her were only dilapidated fences, dilapidated walls, and wreckage. It was incomparably wretched, and there wasn't a single complete corpse. Senior sister. Senior sister. Arbor dashed to a holy water sect disciple whose face was covered in blood and grime. She hugged her head that had rolled to the side of the grass and shook it vigorously. Senior sister. Arbor hugged this head tightly and didn't notice at all that her chest was already drenched in blood. Senior sister, senior sister. This senior sister and the others all had cultivations around level 5 or 6, and they guarded the mountain gate all year round. Arbor's eyes reddened, and she abruptly turned her head. She suddenly fished out a small, intact girl's body from under a headless corpse as if she had gone mad. She was a bit warm to the touch. This child was still alive. She was still alive. Xiao Mu immediately performed acupuncture and breathed into her, promptly feeding her the best medicinal solution she had on hand. After a long while, the girl coughed out blood and weakly opened her eyes. Her eyes suddenly emitted a faint light. I know you. You fly in the sky, Sister Immortal. The girl's voice was hoarse and gloomy as she spoke intermittently. I'm not some immortal. I'm just a useless person. I can't save you. I can't save anyone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Arbor's tears immediately flowed down. Too late, her reply was too late. It was still too late. This girl was already incurable. If she could return half a day earlier, perhaps she could. Or perhaps if the sapling was here, she could ask it for an excellent spirit pill. But it was useless to say anything now. Sister. My mother said that the dead will turn into monsters. The girl's internal organs were all injured, and she hadn't had enough food and water for so many days. She was already on the verge of death. As she spoke, blood constantly spurted out from her mouth. I don't want to become a monster. Arbor hugged her, tears falling on her face. She nodded heavily and said, Sister promises you. You will never become a monster. Okay. The little girl pointed and cried out weakly, and my mother. Arbor hugged her tightly and subconsciously reached out to cover her cold little hand. He murmured softly, Big sister will bury you and your mother together. You won't be separated anymore. Your mother will continue to protect you in her next life. Big sister, don't cry. You're an immortal. The little girl's voice grew weaker and weaker until there was no more sound. Arbor bit her thin lips and hugged the little girl tightly. She lowered her little head and said softly, I'm not an immortal. I'm not. I can't even save you. Rushing all the way from Xianghe village to the mountain gate, on both sides of the mountain path, she occasionally saw several incomplete corpses of her senior sisters. Xiao Mu did not know how she managed to walk up. She really did not know. She felt as if she was floating, as if she was stepping on a ball of cotton or a cloud. She staggered up the mountain while stumbling. Chapter 469. She didn't have many tears left. In the past, Xiaomu truly did not know that a person's body could shed so many tears. So when she ascended the sect master's peak and stared blankly at the tragic scene in front of her, she didn't shed any tears. She just stood there in a daze, staring blankly. The bamboo buildings were razed to the ground, and the sect master's favorite bamboo forest was also burned to the ground. She couldn't tell which of the corpses on the ground were the enemies and which were her sisters. Her foot kicked something. She looked down and saw that she knew this person. It was Second Peak's fool, Chang Yushi. She squatted down and patted Chang Yushi's blood-stained face. She said expressionlessly, "Fool, get up. Didn't you want to be my follower? I'll allow it. Get up." Chang Yushi closed her eyes and didn't say anything. She no longer had her usual vigor. "Get up, get up." Arbor scooped up her body and watched as the lower half of her body fell to the ground with a crash. She walked forward in a daze and saw countless familiar faces. Third Peak's senior marshal sister Li Ling. The first time she met her was before the operation in Qinghe town. She walked up to her and introduced herself with a bright smile. "I'm Third Peak's Li Ling, Second Peak's senior marshal sister Su Qinghu." Back then, she was carried back to Second Peak by Second Marshal Uncle. When she came out of seclusion, she saw Su Qinghu fainting from hunger on Second Peak. She thought they were idiots. Su Qinghu even asked her, "Are you very hungry?" At that time, senior marshal sister Su smiled shyly at her. "I'm fine, little junior marshal sister." "Fine? Not fine at all. You're all dead now." Second senior marshal sister. She saw second senior marshal sister Shui Zhao's half-severed body fall into the snow pit. She turned around and sprinted forward, pouncing on a body. Compared to the other pitiful senior marshal sisters, eldest senior marshal sister Su Shanshan's body was very intact. She quietly lay beside the snow pit with her eyes closed, leaning her head against second senior marshal sister Shui Zhao's half-severed body. Arbor thought she was so sad that she couldn't cry anymore. But her tears kept falling down inexplicably. She couldn't stop it at all. "Liar!" Arbor forcefully slapped eldest senior sister Su Shanshan's arm and whimpered, "You told me in Qinghe town that you would protect me. You wouldn't leave me alone. Liar, liar." Arbor slapped her twice again. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked back and forth at the corpses on the sect master's peak. She suddenly dragged out her voice and yelled, "Murong Sun! Murong Sun! Murong Sun, where are you? Murong Sun, you big liar! Murong Sun, you lied to me!" She dragged her tired feet and circled the entire sect master's peak, but she did not see Murong Sun. Instead, he found Third Marshal Aunt Lu Yun's head. She hugged Lu Yun's head and stumbled over to Su Shanshan's side. She placed Lu Yun beside Su Shanshan and cried until her voice was hoarse. She said pitifully, "Third Marshal Uncle, stay here and accompany eldest Marshal Sister. I still have to find my master, but I don't know where my master has gone. Third Marshal Uncle, where do you think my master went?" She then picked up Lu Yun's head and helped her wipe off the dirt on her face. With a confused expression, she asked, "Third Marshal Uncle, where do you think my master went?" "Murong Sun. Murong Sun, come out." The little fellow placed Lu Yun's head next to Su Shanshan and suddenly sprinted toward the ancestral hall. Chapter 470. Half of the ancestral hall had been destroyed long ago, leaving behind only a small portion of lonely wreckage. Arbor dazedly flipped through the miniature life lanterns of the sect's disciples. She watched as second senior sister Shui Zhao's battered body was flung away at the final juncture of her battle with the enemy. Arbor could not shed any more tears. She propped up her cheek with one hand and flipped through the miniature life lanterns one by one. When she saw the sect master dragging a stooped old man up the snowy peak to self-destruct, she suddenly froze. She recognized this old man. She had met this old man once outside Xixia Valley's second southern courtyard. Later, she also saw this old man on the competition field. Wasn't he a guest elder of the ghost faction? What exactly were the middle 6 prefectures rumored in the marketplace? Could it be that this guest elder of the ghost faction was actually someone from the middle 6 prefectures? She did not find Murong Sun's life lantern. Perhaps because the ancestral hall collapsed, more than half of the disciples' life lanterns were smashed down by rocks. Arbor lowered her head and searched through the cracks in the rocks for a long time but could not find it. Instead, she dug until her fingers were bleeding. "Master!" Chocho did not dare to speak and weakly called out, "Don't dig anymore. It probably slid down the snowy peak due to the avalanche." "Murong Sun! You big liar!" The little stoic expressionlessly retorted. "You still have a master. Master will definitely accompany you in the future. Master has never lied to you. They were all lies." "Chocho, do you know?" The little stoic muttered to herself hoarsely, "I won't have a master in the future." "Ha ha ha, what are you afraid of without a master? Without a master, you still have me, your older brother. Little beauty, as long as you're willing to return with me, I guarantee you'll eat and drink well in the future. You definitely won't have a bad life." An ear-piercing teasing laughter suddenly barged into Arbor's ears. She stood up and took a step forward. The tip of her foot kicked something like a hard iron tablet. She bent down to pick it up and flipped through it before putting it away into her inner world with an icy expression. Afterwards, she looked up at the group of people outside the ancestral hall. She recognized them all. Myriad Faction's faction master's son, Fei Qing, sickly and lecherously eyeing Holy Water Sect's disciples all day long. Ghost Sect's elder Ghost Surd. Granny Witch and her group from Coitus Sect. One of them was an old friend of Arbor's. Back when they were fighting for the paradise, Mo Lien had helped to extract a strand of her soul. She was Yao Ji of the Coitus Sect. At this moment, her life spirit was still in Arbor's inner world, so when Arbor looked at her coldly, Yao Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. "You pervert. You won't change even after 3 sentences." Coitus Sect's Chi Mei covered her mouth and giggled. She swayed her body flirtatiously and smiled sweetly at Arbor. "Junior Marshall's sister, you're the only one left. TSK, tisk, she's crying. Look on that tear-stained face of hers. TSK, the tears haven't even dried yet." If the Holy Water Sect's 3 peak masters saw this, their hearts would definitely ache. Arbor coldly stared at this woman and coldly said, "What? Ghost Sect, Myriad Faction, Coitus Sect, and Ghost Sect can't wait to hit someone when they're down?" Myriad Faction's Fei Qing pretentiously smiled and said, "What are you saying? Our 3 factions also heard that something happened to the Holy Water Sect, so we specially rushed over to take a look and offer our condolences. Little Junior Marshall's sister, don't be afraid. Come to brother. Brother will protect you." Chapter 471. Protection. Xiao Mu's eyes involuntarily narrowed, and her eyes, which were as cold as ice, slowly swept a glance at Fei Qing. Fei Qing inexplicably shuddered on the spot, but at the same time, he secretly became excited. He had always liked pretty girls, especially younger ones. He liked them even more. In the towns near Myriad Faction, there were at least 800 if not 1,000 girls who had been ruined by his hands. Chi Mei jokingly called him a pervert, and that was not just in name. When he was in Xixia Valley, his heart had long been itching uncontrollably in front of so many pretty girls from the Holy Water Sect. Unfortunately, his father, Fei Pengyi, had severely warned him not to be rash due to the presence of the 3 peak masters. As a result, he didn't dare to make a move during the entire competition. Normally, he would have seen this exquisite and adorable little junior sister who was like a small ice sculpture long ago. Unfortunately, this little fellow was never alone. She was usually surrounded by a group of people and stars, so he didn't have a chance to make a move. But today was different. Look at the dilapidated surroundings. The Holy Water sect had been exterminated. What other backing would his little junior sister have in the future? Wouldn't it be easy for him to capture her? As he thought about this, Fei Qing's expression became even more smug. He glanced at Arbor with greed in his eyes and beckoned at her again. Little junior sister, don't be afraid. Come here. Aren't we old acquaintances? On the side, Chi Mei giggled again. Unexpectedly, when she met Arbor's bone-chilling eyes, her heart skipped a beat for some reason. Ghost Sword impatiently roared from the side, you still have the time to waste with her? Why don't you capture her first? After speaking, he didn't care about how flustered and exasperated Fei Qing was. He stretched out his hand toward Arbor's neck. He originally thought that he would be able to pick up the little girl like picking up a little chick. Ghost Sword's eyes even emitted an evil glint. Most of the Ghost faction's disciples who came to participate in the competition were killed by the Holy Water sect. Now, the heavens had eyes and gave them retribution for their sect's extermination. If he didn't act now, when would he? When he ruthlessly attacked, he seemed to have completely forgotten that the Ghost faction's people had suffered many setbacks at the little girl's hands. When they first met, he, Ghost Sword, was already no match for the little girl. Let alone now. A silhouette flashed in front of Ghost Sword. With a sweep of his wrist, a dagger slid across Ghost Sword's neck, drawing a long line of blood on his neck. Ghost Sword subconsciously touched the line of blood on his throat. As he fell, his eyes were filled with disbelief. His life was taken away as soon as they met. Why? Yet Granny Witch's hair stood on end, and she bellowed, idiot, this little brat is no longer that little level 8 mystic cultivator from back then. Pooh! Granny Witch only felt a pain in her back. She was thrown a few steps forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. This sneak attack caused her to be greatly alarmed. The disciples of Coitus sect were also dumbfounded. They all turned their heads to look at Yao Ji, who had suddenly attacked Granny Witch. Their faces were filled with shock and astonishment as they shrieked in terror, "What are you doing, Yao Ji? I pledge my life to the young master." Yao Ji shouted at Xiao Mu and clawed the face of a Coitus faction disciple beside her with a backhand. Immediately, a gurgling stream of venom flowed out of that disciple's face. Chapter 472. Previously, Yao Ji was still a bit hesitant, unsure whether she should make a move or not. One had to know that the three factions had gathered about 100 people, and the little girl was alone. If she suddenly betrayed Coitus sect and stood by the little girl's side to resist the three factions' 100 people, then she would undoubtedly die. However, her fate's soul was in the little girl's hands. If she didn't help her, then she would definitely lose her life on the spot. With the little girl's ruthless temperament and vicious methods, she definitely wouldn't let an enemy like her off. Thus, Yao Ji made all kinds of calculations and felt that she would definitely die at this moment. However, when she saw the little girl slash Ghost Sword to death with a dagger, Yao Ji knew that her chance had come. The little girl seemed to be much stronger than she expected. She knew she had to gamble this time. She stood behind Granny Witch and instantly pierced Granny Witch's heart with a cold stab. How could Granny Witch and the Coitus sect disciples have anticipated that Yao Ji would suddenly make a move? Their Coitus sect's formation was thrown into chaos. At the same time, the little girl had already rushed forward. She flung out countless flying talismans, trapping Fei Qing's group. Ebony intermediate level binding talisman formation. It could bind at most 10 people at a time. These people's cultivation levels were slightly lower than hers. Once she used this binding talisman formation to bind them, everyone turned pale with fright. They were bound inside the talisman formation's circle and couldn't escape no matter how hard they tried. Only now did they remember. During the competition, the little girl had once used this move against Daybreak Sect's Mu Liangda. At that time, they were still secretly mocking Mu Liangda for being useless for not being able to defeat a 12 to 13-year-old little girl. But now, when they had a taste of this binding talisman formation, their faces suddenly turned pale with fright. They couldn't move. They couldn't even release mystic energy after being bound by this binding talisman formation. Fei Qing, this useless guy, was so frightened that his face contorted. He continuously tried to break out of this talisman formation and looked up at Arbor with a pale face. Just as he called out, "Little junior sister," the little fellow furiously raised her ferrule and smacked it down on his head. "Who's your little junior sister?" Was the 3 words "little junior sister" something a filthy guy like you could call out? "Die for me." Arbor tossed out a handful of shooting star scatters with a flick of his hand. Ding, 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 they hit the people in the array. Fei Qing and the others were like turtles in a jar, unable to resist at all. After a burst of meteor scattering, Fei Qing was horrified to find that the disciples he had pulled in front of him to resist the meteor scattering were now like live targets, their bodies covered with small nails. "You!" Fei Qing's face was filled with panic as he shouted. At this critical moment of life and death, he didn't dare to call her junior sister anymore. He also didn't dare to tease her anymore. Instead, he kept saying, "How dare you, little bitch! If you dare to hurt me, my father won't let you off." Fei Qing felt that his threat was useless. The little girl's face was expressionless as she directly struck out a mighty profound energy that fiercely struck Fei Qing's chin, directly smashing his mouth into pieces. Fei Qing's unpleasant roar came to an abrupt stop. Arbor pounced forward and fiercely struck his head with the ferrule, immediately smashing his skull open. Brain matter burst out, and he died on the spot. "Since you're here, then stay." The little girl pinched 2 core-crushing thunders between her fingers and fiercely threw them into the crowd. Under the panicked gazes of the crowd, the core-crushing thunders suddenly exploded. Aoe and the others chased with all their might, but when they heard the explosion halfway up the mountain, they immediately flew up the snowy peak. Chapter 473. "Little miss, you're a bit interesting." A sinister laugh came from Arbor's back. Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan had actually been guarding the holy water sect this entire time. Ever since the sect master self-detonated while dragging Luigi was heavily injured and could no longer fight. The entire Shantian Prefecture's strength was also greatly reduced. The remaining people from Shantian Prefecture carried Luigi down the snowy peak. However, Hong Jinchuan was unwilling to give up, so he led the 300 people from Ani Prefecture to guard the sect for a few more days. Sure enough, he had been waiting for someone to come today. He had been secretly observing the little girl and learned of her identity. Holy Water Sect's first peak master, Murong Sun's personal disciple, truly was a girl with outstanding strength. The disciples from the 3 factions could not last more than a few moves in her hands before they scattered like birds and beasts. Unfortunately, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator was nothing in his eyes. "Little girl, obediently tell me the holy water's whereabouts. I can spare your life." Hong Jinchuan chuckled as he looked at Arbor. Calculating the time, the people from the other prefectures should be arriving soon. Before that, he had to trick the little girl into speaking up as soon as possible. If it didn't work, he might have to use some unpleasant methods. "Holy water," Arbor muttered to himself. As expected, they came for Lady Holy Water. But why did they call it holy water? Yes, it's holy water. We received news that the holy water is inside your holy water sect. Unfortunately, they turned the entire holy water sect upside down but did not find anything. The strangest thing was that such a large sect did not even have a treasury or something like that. It simply made people depressed. "Where's Murong Sun?" the little girl suddenly asked coldly and did not answer Hong Jinchuan's question. Hong Jinchuan couldn't help but be angry, and his lips twitched with a fake smile. "Your master? Don't tell me you still don't know. Look at your sect. Corpses are strewn everywhere and broken limbs are everywhere. Why are they so incomplete? Ha 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 ha, it's because idiots like them are all playing with self-detonation, ha ha ha. Unfortunately, to us level 15 great mystic cultivators, it's like the light of a firefly and can't harm us at all." Xiao Mu suppressed the resentment in her heart and coldly gazed at them. The auras of Hong Jinchuan and the others were indeed very powerful. There were more than 300 people from Ani Prefecture, and she couldn't see through at least 100 of them, which meant that their cultivations were definitely higher than hers. Moreover, how many of them were level 15 great mystic cultivators like Hong Jinchuan? If it was only for her to challenge level 10 or level 23 great mystic cultivators above her level, she might still have a chance. But now, asking her, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator, to challenge multiple level 15 great mystic cultivators was practically sending herself to her death. Of course, she also had her trump cards and might be able to kill a few level 15 great mystic cultivators. What's your name? This old man is Hong Jinchuan of Ani Prefecture. Hong Jinchuan wasn't worried at all about the consequences of exposing his name to the little girl. In his opinion, Murong Sun, his last disciple, was already a dead person. Murong Sun self-detonated? The little girl asked expressionlessly with pursed lips. You killed her? The little girl pressed on. Hong Jinchuan became impatient. Does it matter who killed her? You're just a little girl, could it be that you want to avenge your sect by yourself?